Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. I'm your host Richard Lewis, and joining me as he always does is the esports historian Duncan Thorin Shields. Pressing the buttons is Sam Bainlaw Davies. Still doing it, Sam, you haven't changed your name. It's the first show of 2021, and as promised, we're going to get into something that we thought we might leave in 2020, but no, we're going to do the Flashpoint special with all of the drama and all of the discussion based around it. First, some pleasantries. I sound like Data from Star Trek, don't I? So first, some human interaction and pleasantries. How are you doing? How was your New Year's? Did you do anything? Are you allowed to do anything where you live?
I mean, in theory, the lockdown's like semi-casual in the Netherlands. Like, you can still go out. There's nothing to do. Like, there's nowhere open, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, you can only order food or whatever. You can't go to a restaurant. So there's not really anything to do. But no, I've had a pretty good time. I just chilled out for 2 weeks, basically. Did a little bit, just did the odd piece of work. But actually, for my life, it's probably the longest I've taken a proper break off with no work whatsoever. Because obviously, you can knock it out anytime you want. You got a webcam, can't you?
Well, you look rejuvenated. Bit more red in the beard. A little bit of a tan.
We'll get to the reasons why in this episode, because put it this way, you know this, with the way esports is, like, just to even give yourself 1 or 2 full days off, normally it's like, right, something really serious will start. So, like, when I came back after the experience I've just had, I just literally was like, fuck this, for literally a week, I'm doing nothing. Like I did, like, the odd show with you and a couple of other people, like, just as the weeks went by. But aside from that, I've done literally almost nothing, because I just needed to fully detox my brain from how bad it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same for me as well. Like, I like this is how bad esports actually is. Like, after we did that show, well, just before we did that show, I got sick. I was sick over the holidays. I was fucking loaded with cold and ill and miserable. And you know what? I was lying in bed and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't stream. I couldn't record shows. I was at state, and that was actually a holiday. That was actually a holiday of sorts. It was wrecking me. And I felt awful the entire time, but at least I wasn't working. So, you know, it was almost like a break, not of the body, but of the mind. I think that's kind of telling as to how insane sort of esports is, the schedule and that. But I mean, like, other than that, a fruitful holiday period, everything feeling rejuvenated, ready to tackle 2021.
Yeah, I'm not one of those people who get, like, luckily with where my job is anyway, I don't really, like, get bothered by the fact that, like, oh, no, the year's ending or whatever. It's all the same to me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back to things. Yeah, I've had enough time off now, recuperated. Time to wreck all the cunts, isn't it?
Yeah, well, time to wreck all the cunts, indeed. Sam, for the benefit of the show as well, what did you get up to? Because, like, I think Port Talbot, isn't that like tier 4 lockdown now?
Most of Wales was, yeah. Not that much. I've been fucking smoking meat, mate. That's been my fucking COVID hobby.
I didn't expect meat to be what you just said right there. I know.
Oh, mate, I've nearly bullfrogged myself.
Because Sam doesn't realise this, because that's a totally reasonable thing to actually say in any other area in history. It's like, oh, for this year, Richard, I'm going to start smoking poles or whatever. Is he going so close? I'm smoking meat.
In spice. Spice meat.
Yeah, I've been smoking spice. Yeah. Well, I'm glad. No, it was tier 4 lockdown up here as well. See, and cleverly, what they did round here was they waited, because obviously Boris Johnson was very big about going, well, we can't cancel Christmas, and I look like a man wearing a pig's head with a blonde wig on it. Like,
David Cameron's going, ooh,
yeah, I know, yeah,
Boris.
Ooh. Yeah. I tell you, never those. I just like those lips.
Exactly.
So anyway. He said we had Christmas, right? And he was saying, like, you know, they made up a bunch of, like, mumbo-jumbo rules, didn't he? Like, you have fucking 3 families that live within 6 miles. If you answer me these riddles 3, you get, like, a 4th family and live in a bubble. And I was just mental. No one could fucking figure out. It was. Yeah. It was fucking ridiculous. And then they were, like, literally where I live. On the 30th, they said, we will be going into tier 4 lockdown on the 31st. And for those who don't know, tier 4 lockdown, all entertainment venues will be closed. All entertainment venues. So no entertainment to be had whatsoever. Basically stayed in. I'd had some people from my support bubble over, smoked weed, played Bloodborne on my PS5. That was it. It's probably the most boring New Year's Eve I've ever had since like being a fucking student when I had no cash. It was garbage.
It's also a ridiculous way to spend New Year's Eve, isn't it? Like, right, lads, well, let's just celebrate the year. Let's all get high. Now let's all play Bloodborne 5 or whatever.
Yeah, no, yeah, Bloodborne. Oh, Bloodborne's really good. I think you like it, Duncan.
It's what game is it?
Well, it's like it's from the people who make Dark Souls, From Software.
Oh, okay.
So it's like that, although it's a lot more accessible and not as
Not so
brutally
hardcore,
difficult.
right, okay.
Yeah, but it's Lovecraftian.
Okay, sounds all right.
As you play through, basically it's about this city, right? And there was a bunch of people. They discovered these old gods under the city, and their blood heals people miraculously. So they set up a church around it, and they're like, "Listen, this is great. What a boon! We can cure any diseases, you know." No. But then the terrible penalty is it turns you bestial. It turns you into a beast over time. No one saw it coming, and they've been dosing all these motherfuckers with this blood. So now the city's overrun with monsters. The people who aren't monsters are fucking. The only way you can get strong enough to fight the monsters is to take the blood. So you become a monster, and so they have to hire these dudes called hunters, and that's where you come in. You're a hunter, and you go and you fight all the beasts, and you do that. And basically, the more you play through, you gain this thing called insight. And as you play through more and more, you start seeing all the elder gods. They were there the whole time watching you.
Right.
It's mental. It's a good game. I think you like it, mate. So it's up your street, mate. You take some fucking DMT, play that, living the dream.
No, right. I've always thought actually that is one mad underestimated element of Lovecraft is what he nailed basically is the premise of making it truly terrifying, isn't it? Because the whole point, what he understood that no one else really somehow got about that genre is that the ultimate terror actually is the one that's incomprehensible. It's not even just like nightmarish. It's just the idea you can't comprehend it. I think what's mad is I really do mean that's mad slept on, because the problem really with it is you can't show it in movies, so you'll never really translate to movies. But if people don't know, that premise is genius, because basically that's why those stories always end with the protagonist just going mental or whatever, isn't it? Because the idea is when you're faced with that level of terror, that's what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the meme is, if you've ever seen it. It's like Lovecraft when presented with terror that is comprehensible. and it's just him like really like bored by it. But yeah, mate, I love all this stuff. It's right. Just as a new film, Nick Cage just did the color out of space.
Yeah,
I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to.
It wasn't that great. It was all right. The problem with that one is because it was Nick Cage. I thought it was going to be on the level of that Mandy movie. Like,
what's from the same production company?
It was worth giving a try, but it wasn't that mega. Put it that way. The difference is the other one was mega.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's great story as well. There's a German film. I think it's called like, what's the German word for color? Is it just color? Is it like just their color? My German's terrible these days. But anyway, if you watch that, it's like black and white, and they've deliberately filmed it in Farbe. There you go, Die Farbe. What an intelligent, cultured chat we have. Yeah, Die Farbe. Watch that movie. It's like black and white. So when the color is there of the color from outer space, I mean, because that's a mad premise right there. And then it's a color that you can't perceive, like cannot be expressed in words because it's imperceptible to the human mind. Great stuff, Lovecraft. It's not all bad. This is all I'm saying. It's bad. There's definitely some bad, but his stories are great. Right then, let's do the sponsor shout outs. Remember that bit. Yep. So .com, love them, you know them. Go sign up. .com/RLS. Place esports bets in a safe, ethical environment in 2021. Do recommend it. And obviously NordVPN as well. If you want to get a VPN, they're having a sale at the moment. The holiday sale's been extended, 70% off. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS and sign up. So it's the Flashpoint special. The elephant in the room, Duncan. It's the only thing anyone ever talks about. I'm so fucking jaded with COVID talk. Like you, not just fucking so bored of talking.
It got boring months ago, didn't it?
Yeah, but like everyone, it's like everything is passed through the. I was just saying to Sam before I went live. My mother sent me an email. She does that from time to time, and she's a mad boomer. Like, and she just sent me one, and the last line. How was this for a sign off? It said, because we've been in lockdown for so long, we are taking vitamin D. Supplements. The NHS recommends 10 micrograms. Bye. It's like, all right, Ma. Cheers. I'll keep that in mind. Everything's about the fucking virus all the fucking time. and it's just wretched. I'm so tired of talking about it. Like, we got a vaccine. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. It'll be sorted by the end of next year.
By the way, you know, the maddest thing about this is in some obscure way that we could have never predicted, we were actually trained for this by all that nonsense, which now seems quaint, of the whole culture war, where it was just stupid shit like games
I know.
arguing about. Like, at the time, you thought,
do you remember those wonderful days?
But what's mad is that is basically what all of life is now. It's like this oppressive media entity exists that you can't escape if you turn any technical device on, because the story just comes out of the screen at you. You can't get away from it.
Yeah, that's definitely been a contributing factor to so many people losing their marbles, I think, as well. You know, it's like you could have. Well, yeah, you could avoid Twitter before. You didn't really need to be on Twitter, you know. But now, what else am I going to do? You know, I'm fucking stuck indoors. So it's definitely driven a lot of people up the wall. But anyway, that being said, let's talk about the COVID outbreak at Flashpoint. Now, there was a lot going on around this. When Flashpoint 2 was announced, they said they were going to do a bubble. And for those that don't know, bubble has become a sort of colloquial term for when they do these hermetically sealed events that literally you go in, you are tested to make sure you don't have COVID. You get into a quarantine situation where you then wait 14 days, which is the maximum known incubation period for the COVID-19 virus. Then once you are from that point, you only interact with other people in the venue that have gone through the same thing, and nobody goes in or nobody goes out without those protocols being met, therefore guaranteeing nobody can infect anybody else. This has been done so the NBA can continue. This has been done so NFL games can happen, football matches can happen. When it came and it's been done successfully in esports in China with League of Legends. You've got to hand it to Riot. They pulled off Worlds with a crowd, a minimized crowd, but still a crowd, and there wasn't a single reported infection or any negative effects of any of the players or any of the attendees. It's quite a feat. So when Flashpoint said they were going to do it, the assumption was just going to be like, well, yeah, I mean, it's possible, but obviously, there were doubters, there were naysayers, because we're esports and everything we do is always a fucking travesty. Anyway, fast forward to week whatever the fuck it was, just before the finals. Turns out there was an outbreak of COVID among the crew. People didn't know who had it, who'd interacted with who else, and everyone was essentially thrown into lockdown, ruined the finals as a spectacle because they had to go back to this non-studio.
We're just in our rooms, basically, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll let you jump in. I've set the scene. You worked the event. It must have been bitterly disappointing, and I imagine you were, knowing you must have been furious.
Yeah, especially because to me, the entire premise of doing this bubble turns out to be basically, I won't say fraudulent, like I actually do think they went into it with good intentions, but I would just say ill-advised would be the most obvious like terminology that would surround the way this was done. Because as you say, what you described is what I understood the bubble to be. Like the whole premise was the reason you're in a bubble is because you've gone through such strict isolation and then testing that we cannot, the notion of it is, if people don't get it, is that once you're in the bubble, you can actually be freer than people outside are because they're not in a bubble. Therefore, since everyone in theory has been vetted and tested negative, now in theory you can be all around each other without masks and you can be within the 2 meter span or whatever, because obviously you need all the stuff to do some of the skits, etc. So the premise sounded fine. Like if the premise is we all go there, if we go through all these procedures, we're going to get to do like a level of production stuff, like all those skits that we never would if it's just online, because that's basically what we've lost in esports. Sounded great. If you remember, the original premise was even more ambitious. The original idea was to have the teams go there and go through all this and then have an actual LAN tournament. It's just that got cancelled like, a few weeks out when we find out that the teams couldn't come, because actually nothing to do with that. It's the fact that if the teams came, if they'd have done the self-isolation thing for 2 weeks, there's no way they could have sort of come and then gone back to go do Blast or the IEM or whatever. So basically, having players was never going to logistically work. So when we heard that we were coming to do talent, I was initially up for it on the level of, obviously I can do things with Flashpoint. I can't do it at a normal event. So being able to do all those skits, being able to do it. At the time, we thought being able to do different types of content would be possible. So a lot of them weren't possible. So we did what we could. This is where the problem comes, though. is that once we arrive, and even as you say, the term bubble was thrown around a lot, but really no one knows what the specifics of those bubbles are. Like, based on the things I've heard, it sounds to me like those NFL and NBA ones have like a massive amount of money involved with them. And so, first of all, people are testing positive within those bubbles, but it's just not that often. You quarantine them, you keep going. And basically, as far as I know, if they have the opposite problem to us. In esports, people looked and they were like, is it possible to run an event if you do a bubble thing? It was the other way around. In those sports, it was like, mate, look how much money's invested in this already. Look how much we'll lose if we don't run a season. Like, is it possible to run any? They were going from the opposite side, if anything. They were like, right, well, we'll go through any amount of costs. Remember, the other thing about events that people don't realize is it happened in certain sports as well. You can postpone a game. If like 80% of an NFL game tested positive, you could postpone it in theory to another day. You can't do that with an event when it runs like 3 weeks or something. If it doesn't end in 3 weeks, you shit out a lot. Now, yeah, being online, there's an element of that does exist. But this is the part that's really disappointing to me, is as you say, not at the beginning, but partway through. Like, off the top of my head, if we say that, I think Flashpoint roughly lasted 3 weeks, I'm going to say, with maybe like a week for a break. So let's say roughly 4 weeks, between 3 and 4 weeks. There was every single week, it was like every Friday, we would all do a COVID test. And the idea was, because you'd already originally all tested negative, you could all still associate with each other while the results were coming for the test. But if anyone had have tested positive, then obviously that person would be isolated. Everyone's around them would be isolated. Like, basically at any point in time, the process would have broken down and we would have all had to isolate. But that didn't happen. What happened was we got all the way to the end of the event. The test that was like 3 days before the end of the event, we did it. And someone tested, not out of actual talent, but someone else in the crew, I think it's someone who probably worked in the production crew, tested positive. And basically, this is where the nightmare scenario kicked in. Because before, think about this premise we've described so far, like what Richard described and what I've just said there. Every week you test, and as long as you're not positive, you just stay in the bubble and it keeps going, right? Here's what you wouldn't know, is the person testing positive who isn't me then means I have to then be isolated because I, in theory, could have been in contact with them earlier, hence the whole contact tracing thing. So this is where the event went to shit, quite frankly, because what turned out was when we were doing those weekly tests, one of them came at the end of a week where they'd let a whole bunch of production crew go home. People who lived in the UK just basically went and isolated at their house instead of at the venue. It's even more bizarre, by the way, and we'll get into this in a sec as to why they did that. Because it's not like they were just let out in the free world for a week and went out and had a break and then came back, because in theory, no one could do that. Everyone was under lockdown during this time period. So the bizarrest part about letting people go is all you're effectively letting them do is just go back to their house and self-isolate there. Like, it's not even like there's really even much of an upside to it. So what, for whatever reason, they let a bunch of the talent, their crew rather, go home for a week. Then we came back and did the tests. And the guy told us when we did this test, only at this point, like halfway into the whole process, the guy told us, oh, and by the way, if you test positive, you won't be going home, like, you know, in a week or so when we were all going to go home, like back to other countries. You'd have to stay. And that's when he dropped the news. And this is the key point, like I said earlier. It's not just that you tested positive. I'd understand if you test positive. But if anyone who was in contact with you test positive, you all wait. And so basically what happened was, because someone popped 3 days before the end, everyone, all the people from America, Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands in my case, all the people who are living outside of the UK, because in the UK you could just go to your home and self-isolate there. Obviously, if you're from the UK, you're fine. But everyone who wasn't, we all got told basically initially, like, you're just going to be here 2 weeks longer for no reason. And we were just literally, and this is the other tough part people don't get, because we were told we're there for 2 weeks during a lockdown, well, there's nowhere to go. It's like fucking the Christmas Story or something, like, where do we go now? No space at the inn. Like, there's nowhere to go. So what people don't get is we couldn't just go to a hotel and like check in there. Why the fuck would they want us there? You think a hotel wants you to check in with coronavirus and then self-isolate? No. So what happened was we had to just stay in the hotel we were already in. And they literally just like ramped it up to like prison level tactics where they just like took your room key off you. So you just locked in your own room and you have to like have permission to go in and out of your own room. You basically just stay in your room all day long for a whole week. It would have been longer, but they actually, believe it or not, this is how mad this story gets. At the end of a week of this, when we thought we had another week, bizarrely, like the UK government or something just changed their own like actual like regulations and had reduced the amount of times you had to stay. So we only had to stay for the week instead of 2 weeks. But otherwise, I would have literally been there until, I think it would have been like the 18th or something I would have left. Whereas I got to leave, I think, on the 14th. So Just think about how
4
ridiculous
whole
that
days
is.
extra.
I was essentially just for a whole week, just under like house arrest. I was just in a room, just trapped, doing nothing. No, just trapped in a room. No, I could go outside to smoke for 5 minutes in theory. That was like the only. Or if you signed up to a list, you could be taken on your own to a gym area and work out in the gym for like half an hour. It was actually like being in prison. People don't get it. Like I wasn't even fucking around with it at all. Like I get the time. I don't know what will happen, but I was seriously just thinking, I might never fucking work Flashpoint ever again. Fuck all these clowns.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
it was bad, mate.
No, but there was other components to this, and obviously, without like going into it too much, obviously, I talked to all my friends that work these events and stuff, and Anders had made a very serious commitment to his kids and
understandably,
and his wife that involved him traveling, and as a result of this incompetence, and we'll get to why it is incompetence. He wasn't able to meet that commitment. He was another one. Like you were talking about quitting work with Flashpoint. I think he was talking about throwing the fucking towel in altogether, mate. Yeah, I mean, because he's already given so many, months and months and months of his life not being with his family, to do this thing that we do. You're gonna start questioning it because, like, he was like you. Not only did he have to do the awkward call of telling his family, guess what? Someone's dropped the ball. I'm now cooped up for 2 weeks. He tried everything, mate. It's just ridiculous. So let's get to the incompetent component of it. And there's a couple of bits and pieces here. So the first thing is that it was never a bubble.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, yeah.
It was never a bubble. It was never a bubble. I don't even know what they were thinking. They let, for 1 week, when I think you guys had some downtime and weren't doing an event, they let people who lived locally go home.
Yeah, if people don't know, what happened was with the way the event was scheduled, because Blast was going on at the same time, Blast needed to do a week of their event during our event. We scheduled around each other. So there was a week where there wasn't any Flashpoint. It was like where there was like a whole week off before, I think, the playoffs. But basically, like, we wouldn't have chosen to have that week off. We just had to because of scheduling. But in this week, yeah, that's when they let the crew go home, basically, like some of them at least.
And that was done, I'm guessing, like, because it was a cost-cutting measure, right?
Would make sense, yeah.
Yeah, no show to produce, no need for a crew. But
all these people work on day rates, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So, this, you can already see, I hope everyone watching, you can already see the madness here. To basically save, like, a week's worth of money and to not pay people for their time, they let people break the bubble. And it weren't just the crew. I mean, like, again, I don't want to name names, but there was some talent I saw tweeting that they were out and about. And it's like, well, I mean, that works in theory, but the next problem you've got is testing in general. Let's stop pretending the tests are 100% accurate.
Yeah, that's part of my problem with this whole thing as well, by the way, is basically the reason in the story I was very clear about the fact I only found out that you could potentially be delayed 2 weeks extra right near the end of the experience. Like, I'm going to say like 75% of the way through my Flashpoint 2 journey, I've found out, like, right, you're just trapped for 2 weeks if some guy tests positive. Like, not only does that literally strip me of my consent to choose to stay and opt into a scenario where I potentially lose 2 extra weeks, but as you say and alluded to, if people haven't looked into it and how you could have not looked into it and still care about this topic in 2020, I don't understand. But basically, just look up something called a PCR test. You can even look up the guy who invented it. His name's like Kerry Mullins or something. He'll straight up tell you, like, what those tests do, as far as I know as a layman, is they sort of take any kind of material you have and just sort of blow it up so you can sort of see, like, I've detected there was some of that there. Well, the problem is basically these tests are notorious for, if they have an error with them, it's way more likely, something like 10 times more likely, that the error is a false positive as opposed to a false negative. Now, that might sound weird because you might think, well, does that matter? Like, it's not, then a person's not actually, no, it does, because you're going to test positive for coronavirus. But what you're not going to know is you might not actually have anything at all. So the point, as you were getting to here, is this would already be a super precarious situation for anyone to keyword opt into if the test was 100% reliable. But in this scenario, what we're seeing here is, if anyone, whether it's actually accurate or not, just what the test says, if anyone tests for a trace of whatever then shows on that test as coronavirus on the PCR test, and who knows what cycle it was at, etc., I don't even know these specifics, then the whole event's fucked. And remember, it was already bad enough, as you say, it happened right during our playoffs and sort of scuppered the end of the event because it just wasn't that good. Like people were having to produce the event from their rooms as well. Like this isn't like a normal event where it's like, right, people go. No, as in, remember, it's the UK government. So what happened was the second someone tested positive, they just told everyone, get in your rooms now. Like everyone separate, go to your rooms. Like, so even the production people couldn't like take equipment. They all had to wait and get it. So the fact they ended the event, I'll give them props for. That's very, very difficult to manage. But the point I'm getting to here is, exactly. Like every single aspect of the event falls apart if one person tests positive. That's just not a good gamble to take, is it? I'm not talking about the whole angle of people getting an illness. I'm talking about like you can't logistically run that event. It's the point with the NFL example, like I said before, is they have a million contingencies. There's a million factors to do it, quite frankly. Like, I'll tell you what, those athletes are all going to tell you, of course, run the fucking event. I want to get my paid my salary. I want to get, like everyone involved wants to do with the NFL one, etc. They've all opted in, essentially. But I agree, the way the UK one was done with Flashpoint 2 was more like they just gambled that nothing would go wrong. And they were in a scenario where, as we're pointing out here, it's so unlikely you'd actually get through, I think, like a month time period with that many tests and zero that are positive. I think it's super unlikely it would happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll also add as well, because I was looking into this, I didn't know what I was going to do with it or how I was going to handle it or whether it was a story or whatever. But I knew you were furious. I knew, obviously, the situation with Anders. Obviously, it hit a lot of people. And it's like, you know what? I don't trust people behind the scenes to ever do an effective post-mortem. One of the things we don't do in esports, by the way, is when someone fucks up monumentally. Like, I have never seen a company sit down with all parties involved and assess, how did it happen? Why did it happen? Who's responsible? What can we do moving forward? What do we learn from the event? It's esports. Everyone goes, yeah, that was a bit shit. Let's hope it's better next time. And we go on and we do it. So I didn't trust any of the parties involved in this to have a post-mortem. And let's also be real. When we're talking about people's health, it's fucking serious. It's more serious than just your average fuck-ups, So I did some digging, just poking a fork around the sides. And basically, it looks like the bubble was never even hermetically sealed from the get-go. That there were people from the production team, let's say, that had COVID and were in there with COVID. So, there were some people sort of like, there were some people sort of weirdly. And that, by the way, that might not be a failing of the product, the people in charge of running the bubble or setting the bubble up, because these tests are not 100% reliable. Yes, exactly. So, but you also have to factor that in. Do you know what I mean? Yes. And and you have a personal responsibility. Have you been in isolation? Have you been mixing with people? Have you been out? If you have, maybe you don't work the event. Sorry, guys, but the testing's not 100% accurate. We need to know what you do. Like, I could confidently go to an event now and go through a bubble saying, I know I'm all right because I haven't been out the house in like months or whatever. You know what I mean? But if you go out and you use the tube, and you live in London, yeah, maybe you're not the one to come and do this event, given how unreliable some of the testing can be. So that to me is like, I don't know, just a fucking mess. And like you say, the worst component of it isn't that it happened. Isn't that, it's that there's almost like this flippancy about people's health. And then on top of that, the timing absolutely stinks. The timing's absolutely rotten. So even the people who've managed to muddle through, and also, by the way, must be climbing the walls themselves now, wondering whether they've got the virus. They don't even get to close out the show. Safe in the knowledge that their reward, no matter what happens, is you're now in isolation in a hotel room waiting to see if you get a fucking fever and all these other horrible symptoms happening to you. So it was a real dampener, dude.
Knowing what you know now, I know people will say hindsight, but no, even just know what you know now. Just the risk of what it could do to the event, could do to the schedule, could do to people's health. It just wasn't worth running the event in these conditions, was it? Like, I understand the premise before was like, look, nobody can do any events. Do you only want to do it online, or do you want to see if you can do something different? Yeah, I get the premise of trying it and being ambitious. I'm all about being ambitious in my career. But in this particular case, in my opinion, once you look at the whole picture and you do the cost benefit at the beginning, you go, it's not worth it. Just run it online or do an event next next year. You roll it over, don't you? It just wasn't. I don't think it was worth all the costs involved. And I'm not saying that like I really thought, like it was going to kill a bunch of people. Probably not. Yes, that was very, very unlikely. But just the other things, like the potential to ruin the event, it sort of did ruin it. Let's be real. Like, but it's fair. I didn't have those talent lineups for the final and stuff. I had totally different things set up that we had just bin basically. So, like, yeah, all things considered, I think, like, I hope this is like a lesson and that no one ever does one of these again. I don't think it's worth it. The only way it's worth doing in this era is either as an online tournament or if you want to do a bubble thing. You literally better have millions and you better have a million contingency plans and you better do it for real. As in, it better be a strict bubble. You enter, you do not exit until the tournament finishes. Nobody enters who hasn't been tested and isolated. You do the full games and then and if that costs too much money and it's too hard to handle logistically, don't do it. Just host the event online.
So the question then I would put to you is,
give you an aside. This didn't happen, right? Remember, I did actually get to come home on I think the 14th of December, right? But the world originally was that I was going to come home on December 18th. Now, I don't know if you know this, but on December 20th was when they actually stopped allowing flights from the UK to arrive in the Netherlands. So if I'd have originally left on the 18th and it had even gone extended 2 or 3 days more, I wouldn't even be home now. I would just be living in the UK again for no reason. So to me, again, it's just why take a risk like that? It's not worth it for the end product.
Yeah, well, so this is the question then. I mean, because like obviously a lot of people don't know about the workings of Flashpoint and how the company's structured and who does what for which parts and stuff. So I mean, Flashpoint carry the can here. Flashpoint take the PR hit. The league once again has been sullied by something being less than what it should be because of this ongoing pandemic situation, and it's a mad shame because up until people only remember what's at the end. You can run a shit event on group stage day and have an amazing final, and everyone will suck you off and say you did a great fucking job, and the converse is equally true. Everything, all the content can be great, which it was. We'll come to that in a moment. All the games can be good. Big teams have signed up. We've had some interesting matches, some interesting storylines. All of that's going well. And now we're doing a broadcast from our bedrooms like it's a fucking Skype call for our grand final in our second season. So my question to you is that obviously there must have been some sort of inquiry. People are like looking to fucking make sure it doesn't happen again, but also there has to be some responsibility taken. And, I think Flashpoint coming out of 2020, they're in a bit of a precarious position in terms of how much of an impact they've had, on the CS scene, on the CS space, commensurate to what's been invested into it. So who's carrying the can for it?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I would say that there definitely will be like serious repercussions for this within Flashpoint, the company, like who is in control of what, how it's done. I guarantee some people just won't work with the project again. That might be me, by the way. Maybe I'm the one who has to put my foot down and say I won't do X or Y. But I agree. Like you can't. Well, I actually think your premise is a good one as well. When I think back now, there've been so many fucked up things in esports. But you're right. No one ever does like a proper inquiry. Yeah. What basically happens is it's either so outrageous you're instantly fired, or you just get fired. Yeah. You're fine. That's it. You survive.
Or sometimes it's not even that outrageous, but they fire you anyway just to be safe because again, that's easier than the inquiry.
Yeah. But no, I think the premise is correct because that's the first thing I also thought when all this happened. It's like one of the things I do in general when I work with Flashpoint is I tell people like, look, if you fuck up, that's one thing. Like if you fucked up, but you own it, you acknowledge it, you move on, that's fine. Everyone can make mistakes. I always just want to know though, exactly that is like, where did our system fail? Where did it go wrong? So in this case, my question would be, who made the decision to go ahead with the event? And had they factored in any of these contingency aspects, like what could go wrong, how it could affect everyone at the event? Because if people don't understand as well, let me just paint an even more dark picture, which is the majority of the people involved with arranging the event live in the UK. So it's no skin off their nose if Monty can't go home for 2 weeks or Anders has to miss his kids opening the fucking, it's not the nativity, what do you call the fucking advent calendar? Yeah, whatever, part of the build up to Christmas, etc. They might say, oh, that's a real shame, Anders. Oh, they've got no skin in the game, have they? Like, it doesn't really matter to them. So that's another thing that I found is it just felt a bit off. It's like, why are you gambling with my Christmas if you're just here anyway? Like, what even is that? Yeah. Like, surely we're at least all in it together. Like, so I agree. There definitely should be some sort of investigation after the fact. And they should essentially, if not outright fire people, like there should be serious I would say serious mandates as to how you organize an event like this, because I definitely agree with you as well. You don't want to say this because it was only the last 2 days got spoiled. But listen, when we went to that status, like it did essentially just like make the event half as good by the end. Like those were the most important matches of the tournament. If we'd have had everything up and running, maybe that's how we end on a high. Who knows?
Yep. I mean, also as well, like, I mean, you alluded to it a little bit earlier. You were like, because, like, listen, it's another thing, like isolation in your home is one thing.
Yes.
Being on like house arrest and COVID restriction rules in like a fucking hotel is mental. I like that would piss me off. Like I'd probably be thinking about doing a fucking jailbreak, honestly, because
it's mental, man.
I like you've got your shitty internet connection that's in and out. You can't even just go downstairs to the hotel bar. So a lot of hotels, especially in the UK, don't even bother with a mini bar. You know, what happens for room service? Everyone's got to be fucking masked up. You've got to be at one side. Everything's a palaver and an inconvenience. So, I mean, I got the impression you might have even been thinking about being like, listen, I'm out of Flashpoint. Like, I can't do this. I'm the fucking lightning rod anyway.
Sure.
You know, you get wrecked and blamed for everything that goes wrong as if you're like making every decision at the company. So I was thinking maybe this could have been a part in other ways that you would bill.
Oh, it's not necessarily off the cards yet. Like, put it this way, I will never work any event like that under those conditions ever again. Like, if I even know that's a possibility going in, I'll just say no to begin with. Like, this is what people don't get. What people want you to say is the movie answer of like, oh, well, if the event pulled it all off, it'd all be worth it. So you give up anything. Like, no, there's a price that's reasonable to pay for something. There's a price that isn't. Like the idea of potentially gambling away your whole Christmas just to do some cool, funny skits. Now that isn't worth it. There's nothing cool about that at all. Like, yeah. If the event was what you hoped it would be, like we had the best teams in the world and it was one of the great events in history, maybe that would start to somewhat even the scales up, but we're not even at that level. Like, remember, Flashpoint, the event itself, like, I've probably worked 30 events that were more high profile than Flashpoint, like all the best teams in the world, etc. So that's the big problem is, like, it already was a fraught project as it was. Like, we don't have the teams that we expected to have. I haven't been given some of the resources I thought I would have. The COVID shit's obviously fucked both the first 2 seasons. Like, I've never got to do the format I wanted still. So yeah, there's a lot of problems. So I think it's more like this. When I negotiate with them to potentially work in the future, this will be an impetus behind it. So if we can't reach a reasonable ground, maybe I don't work with them. Maybe they go forwards and they keep doing things their way. I personally think, and this is one area I'm actually fairly optimistic, is what I've already been able to do in terms of actual impact, and the company's been pretty big in terms of direction, the tone, etc. So I would hope they just understand what I bring to the company, and therefore they're willing to just change things up. And it's one of those ones where you hope they just get that it's fucked up as well. They want to change as well. If they don't, then cool, go somewhere else.
Yeah. But let's look at some of the positives. I mean, like, people were like, haha, you won't criticize Flashpoint on your show because Duncan works there. Like, it's like these motherfuckers have learned nothing about our careers over the last like 15, 20 years. Everyone gets it, right? Everyone gets it. But there were definitely some positives, man. I gotta say, like, this is gonna sound awful, but there was some members of the talent team that I was like, when I saw the names down on paper, I was a little bit underwhelmed by. I was like,
of course.
But honestly, there were some people in there that really fucking impressed me, and doing an event of this scale, I didn't know if they could handle it. Well, yeah, they absolutely can. Actually, I mean, it was like it was a nice crew. It was and there were people that I think had potentially career-defining performances. Hawker, I thought he did brilliantly. I think it was like almost like a coming out of like, yeah, I can hang in this company with the Anders and Semlers and James Bardolphs of this world, and I'm not out of place. I'm not like I'm not the fifth wheel, so to speak. Thought the Alan Hender's a guy that like his content's been on Reddit a few times and it's impressed me. He's in that weird twilight zone of where like his content is what everyone says they want.
Yep. Exactly.
And then they never fucking upvote it and support it. But I thought he did a great job. What I liked about the analysis desk was obviously it actually did do some pretty deep dives from an analytical perspective, which is something, if you go look at your other mainstream broadcasts, we've been watching with the sort of weird 3-man desk setups that we've had at the moment hasn't actually been all that in depth. It's been punditry, not analysis. I think we're at a stage, by the way, now. This is going to be something I'm going to push for 2021, making the esports audience understand the difference, because I think they're a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, people don't understand that if you break down anything, if an individual component and assess it and explain it, that is in and of itself analysis. But if you kind of talk endlessly and just give opinions about what you think works, what you think doesn't, that's more leaning towards punditry. And I think, like, there's a lot of broadcasts, you know, I think ESL have done this a lot with the 3-man desk things, where it's punditry, it's good punditry, and it's very credible voices. I'll listen to Maniac talk about anything. I think he's fucking great, you know, by Weber, for instance. But I really did like a lot of the analysis you guys were able to do on this, and sort of the details you were able to go into. And it's just a real shame that wasn't there for the finals, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was obviously one of the main things I pushed for with the event. It's coming from obviously the analysis side of the equation. I've always wanted to see that stuff expanded. If people don't know, that's sort of the thing, basically, that people like Yanko, I won't necessarily speak for Sponge, but I know he's interested in this field.
Yeah.
This is the sort of thing that they've been frustrated with for the last few years. Like, this is, they want to be able to do all the Skybox production stuff and show you more of the game and actually have time to talk about something cool that happened. It's just the problem is normal broadcast format means you just don't have time to waste on that. That's what it's viewed as by normal production people. And more importantly, they also just don't think it's necessary, because as you say, they just think if someone's on camera talking, that's all that happens. You just have to talk for 3 minutes, you fill, goes to a break, then the game starts. For them, that's it solved. They don't get the difference between, exactly. Like, it's one thing me or you or others doing the part where we give our opinions, our perspective, but you also, if you want to give someone time to actually do like in-depth work, showing you something like that can't be as freewheeling as just giving your opinion. That guy has to have time to set up. He has to have the resources. He has to know how it works. He has to know his timings, all that. So certainly it was far from what I want it to be one day, but that's part of the reason. For example, Alan's the best example, because he's never actually done an event, as far as I know, as an analyst. That was the first event he's ever done. But the point is,
didn't show at all, by the way.
I mean, maybe his first couple of broadcasts, maybe he's a little bit nervous, but he got it very quickly. He got
ice in his veins. Ice in his veins, for sure.
Yeah, he got really good really quick. But that's also part of what I wanted to do. Was another thing I also did with this event was I hired people who I was taking a chance on, but I wasn't taking a chance blind. Like, as you say, that guy has a YouTube channel full of content. Like, I can go and see how his mind works. So I can tell someone like that coming in and not be full of shit. Like, look, mate, you just get comfortable. Like, you can do the job already. I know that. Like, I've got the proof of that. So what I wanted to do was definitely put more emphasis on the analysis side. And also, I purposely didn't hire some people. This is the maybe slightly more controversial part. I could have gotten some bigger names, but there are also bigger names where I think, you know, maybe some of them in a rot, or they just haven't developed as much as I wanted. And so I also wanted to keep some of the crew a little bit fresh, so that you could sort of blood them in terms of culture as well. Because one thing I tried to change about this event that you can't have seen externally is, one of the reasons why on these talk shows we always sound like mad boomers, like me, you, Anders, Moses, is because
we are mad boomers as part of it. Like,
but whenever we talk about events, we're always talking about like 2015 as always like the glory days. And realistically, the events were worse. It's just that the crew of people were cooler. Whereas the problem in the modern day, and I'll probably do a video about this some point, is there's a lot of people who are called like tier 1 in esports now who can only do the job, Rich. They have no fucking, they're not interested in a green room. They don't have interest in life stories. Like, it's actually sucked all of the stuff behind the scenes that fans won't know about that made the event fun out of the room. And so one of the things I also wanted to do was, even some really talented people are mega jaded in CSGo now. So I wanted people who haven't even been touched by that at all. People who either are like lower and they're getting a bigger chance in their career, or it's the first time they're at a big event, so that you can get those people going where they're not like, because I've seen what happens when you introduce new talent to the older jaded talent. They just become like them. It's like going to school. Like, you're suddenly like the bad kid because you're hanging around with all the mean kids. Like, I want people to actually have like a positive attitude towards this work, because when we actually have the conditions set like they're starting to get now, we don't need to complain. There's nothing to complain about. It's fucking awesome, this job, if it's done right. Like, if you only have to do one best of 3 a day, you can prep for it, you get all the time you need to do your work, you with cool people, you don't have to complain then. There is no bastard in that equation.
Yeah, no, but I think that's been a big part of it, isn't it? It's like it's taken us so long. Like, we've lost so many fucking, you know, people who just can't be arsed with it. Like, literally can't be arsed with all the hassle, all the headaches, you know, like you say, that this weird downside that doesn't need to exist. You know, it doesn't. Now it's obviously more complicated because the work hard, play hard, party behind the scenes attitude. No one can do that in 2020, and hopefully we get that back in 2021. But I'll just say overall, I think as well, like, you know, I think Freya has become like a really cultured host. She's like impressed me a lot watching her develop. I've never worked an event with Freya. And I think like the staples in the broadcast, you know, it was nice to see Potter kind of being a bit funnier and doing some skits and stuff. I thought it was a really good crew. It really, you know, it's going to be interesting because, you know, whatever happened to a Flashpoint, this is one of those events where you've got a cluster of new emergent talent and they're either going to run with that opportunity and like 2 years from now be really big names in what we do. Or, you know, it's going to be that, like, this is their high watermark of a career that peters out. But all the signs are that actually this is a group of people that are ready to actually get better and better, which is, like, really exciting. Because I agree with you, mate. I'll just also say this. I think there's a number of people who are cruising by on reputation and they don't have the passion or the enthusiasm or the energy, but they have all the expectation to be included on a broadcast. And let me tell you, the entertainment business just ain't like that. Just ain't like that at all. And not in whether it's fucking esports or, you know, whether it's esports or whether it's anything. It's, you know, at the end of the day, you have to fucking have that enthusiasm and keep your work of a quality that warrants hiring you. I think there's a lot of people who are really lazy and apathetic, and I think
this is also why, mate. This is why we need also, I know there's obviously a ridiculous statement because I'm just arguing for me to have my own job, but this is why you need creatives in some of these positions in the industry though. Because again, I didn't do this blind. Like I didn't have to go, oh fuck, I really hope Maui Snake ends up being good. No, I already knew the guy was good. I had him on talk shows. I took him to a different event, that Epicenter event at the end of last year to test him out. Like I'd vetted that these people are legit. But the sad thing is, if it wasn't for me, I'm not exaggerating, none of these people would be working right now. Like Maui Snake would never have been on an event. Fucking this Alan guy would still be on YouTube. So it's actually quite sad in that respect, though. It's like, I wish the ESLs of the world were trying to do this, find the next good talents, because these people are ready. Like, it's not like they're years away from doing it. Maybe they're not going to do ESL 1 Cologne, sure. But you start them at the smaller events to test them, don't you? You can't, as you're saying, you can't keep testing the same guys who have been like the 9th best analyst for the last 3 years. I know. Like, they're not going to make it, are they? They've already peaked as high as they're going.
No, but here's the mad thing. Like, so this is esports, right? This is literally how it works. So you basically, right, the only time smaller names get a chance is as a cost-cutting exercise. A la your DreamHacks, right? They're not doing it because they believe in you. They're not doing it because they want to develop your talent and they want to give you a fucking platform. They're doing it because they can save a few quid. And that's the sad truth. And like, listen, guys, to all the people who work the DreamHacks, like, power to you, get your bread, all of that stuff. But just know that isn't a company that has your back or cares about your long-term development. They probably...
There's one thing that does kill me, because DreamHack especially is the one that always gets exactly this, Richard. It's one thing if someone works the event, but they know the way the game's played. Like, for example, if you worked, like, I'll just throw a random event out there. If you worked, like, ESL 1 New York, let's say, like, 3 years ago, and you were the last person hired, and for you, it was a big deal, you just took a pay cut, mate. That was, you just, the only reason they hired you was because the other guy cost 1.5 times more. But here's the point. If you both get that side of the equation, like Richard says, it's cool. You can do the event, you get to a bigger event, ESL gets to save the money. But this is my problem, is the people you're talking about now, Richard, sometimes they're too dumb to know that they're just there as cheap work. Like, they're the ones who always, because DreamHack are the ultimate ones, because they still play on that vibe of like, it's a crew environment, you know, and like, we're not the bad guy, we're not the evil capitalist guys, we're just trying to do a cool esport. So what they play on is the amount of people work their events and then like publicly thank them as though like they were given a chance. They didn't give you a chance, they just saved money, as Richard said. Like, it's not like they thought you're literally as good as the best person in the world, but we're going to pay less and give you a chance. That would be some epic shit, but they're not doing that. They're just saving money, guys.
Let me also tell you, you know, these people don't even watch their own broadcasts.
Yes.
They've got no pride at all. Like, they just know it's going to be generic esports filler content. They've hired the team. There haven't been any behavioral problems, so it's all going to be fine. And we're just going to put it out there and we're just going to cruise by. And they don't want... Put it this way. In esports, right? I know from people who've hired, like me, from Duncan, from going way back when, no one ever asked us to produce like a show reel. So to an extent, we sort of cruised by on reputation. We had zero opportunities because we were considered too hot for fucking TV or arseholes, or there was this perception that like, it'd be difficult to work with those guys, even though you've never worked with us, so how the fuck would you ever figure it out? I had all the speeches when I was coming up. Yeah, you know, you're not really good enough to sort of be on a podcast and like carry a show. You're not really all that engaging. I think writing is your thing. Then I got a chance to do a podcast, and everyone went, "Oh, you're great on a podcast, but you can never really host a show or tie that down. That requires, you know, restraint and mate, people. Every step of the ladder I stepped up in esports, there were 50 cunts waiting on that ladder to tell me why I shouldn't be there and why I couldn't go any higher, and that was just how I had to live in esports. I'm sure it was the same for you.
Mate, I'm not even joking. It actually is no joke if people know the reference. It is like that classic interview that Kanye did years ago with Zane Lowe, that one where he was like, we're the biggest rock stars of them all. I'm the biggest one of them all. Where he does that mad, like, fucking slow down. Like, it's one way he just basically claims that, like, you know, he was treated like a slave by not being just given, like, opportunity to make clothing in Paris as a fashion designer. But the point he was making wasn't apt on, which is what you're saying here, which is every time you succeed and push past a boundary they said you couldn't do, what they essentially do in the establishment, they just go like, well done, you've done that. I'll now acknowledge you can do that, but I won't acknowledge anything else. And you're like, well, no, but you know the way I broke through that barrier, like I could do that on this next one. They're like, you won't, you never will. And it's only when you make them. By the way, that even ties back into what we're saying, because I've already seen it, mate. I myself was contacting some of these TOs, like, hire this mouse net guy. Look, he'll work for cheap. He's really good. Like, you'll see. I never even got replies to these emails, Richard. These are from people I've known for like decades. The second I've brought in Epicenter and then Flashpoint 1, they were just hiring him after that. Like, that's the point. They're all just fucking copycats, aren't they? They see someone else do it. They go, right now it makes sense.
But it takes effort. To care, and you also have to have not like a magic eye, but you've got to be capable of imagination. It's not just ticking a box. It's not just we need an analyst, we need a commentator, we need this, we need that, right? Like, put it this way, when I was working at WSOE even, right, I remember I signed on to that tournament organizer as the head of talent. That was my title. That's what I did. And yeah, sometimes I was going to be on the show, but not always. So let me say, for example, for the PUBG event, there could only be one host for it. And I was in a choice, and they wanted me. The company wanted me. We're hiring you. We're paying you a load of money. You're a big name. You should host it. But I said no, because Frankie, who was doing all these other events at the time, but was, you know, kind of coming up, I said, Frankie's amazing. She does something different to me. I want to hire Frankie and put her in the show. And so I did it. I made that stand for her. I took myself out of a broadcast to give her the room to go and do what she did. Absolutely the right call for the show. She knew all the PUBG guys. She worked many events with them. We had all that chemistry. That's what I'm talking about. But before I even hired her, I watched 40, 50 reels, different hosts from different games, different backgrounds, who could do this, who could do that. There was a guy called Mustache Dave. Mustache Dave was a dude who did like PUBG analysis and funny videos and highlights. His YouTube videos were getting like 300, 500. And because he had a mustache and he had like Hawaiian shirts or whatever, right? I said to him, I said, he's sick. This guy's wicked. I feel it. I feel the energy. It's going to work. And they were going, but people don't watch his shit. And I went, yeah, because no one knows who he is. We're going to hire him and we're going to put him on air. And they were going, nah, look, he's got a mustache. He's trying to be Dr. Disrespect. Like, you people are so unimaginative. Like, you people are so unimaginative. And the fact you won't take a chance on people when I'm fucking telling you, like, I know this guy's good. Well, he killed it and he went on to become a fucking staple of the PUBG scene, and power to him. He's a fucking great guy and a hard worker and a really talented dude and a nice dude. So that's what upsets me. The fact that, like, these people don't even watch reels. Yes. You don't even go and watch like an obscure YouTube channel. This is where the gold is. The gold isn't in some jaded cunt who's been doing it 10 years and thinks he should be invited to every big event. Yes. Like the people who fucking mauled when they don't get invited to fucking TI over in the Dota scene. Like, you're not owed to living in this. You're as good as your last gig, and not even that. You have to evolve and you have to adapt and you have to change and you have to take chances, and you also have to know there's a time for all of us, you know, like the silverback in the cage that can't fight no more and doesn't want to show it. You have to go and do something else. You have to take yourself off camera sometimes and gracefully give that new generation the chance. Ain't no shame in that. You're doing a great thing. So
no, listen, Richard, when it got to the finals of Flashpoint, I even thought to myself, maybe I should put Porter in there. I thought, fuck them. They haven't earned what I've earned. They can take it from my cold dead hands. Like they should. No, whatever. You get the point.
Yeah, no, of course. So I thought the talent did a great job. We can talk a little bit about the games as well. I think you guys pulled off a real coup in terms of like the teams you got to sign up just before the event.
Like, literally, if people don't know, the timing of it was mental because at the time that we sat, remember, we invited Fnatic, OG, and what was the third one? Big. They were the three we invited, right? At the time we invited them, I think Fnatic was ranked, like, I'm going to say like 14th or something.
Mm-hmm.
I know Big and OG were like 5th and 6th or whatever. But the timing was crazy, mate, because OG made the final of that like IEM. Something mad, I'm going to say like 3 weeks, a month before. VP, who qualified, before Flashpoint qualifier were nobody, and then went on some mental like 17 best of 3 winning streak. Like almost every team spiked as the event came along. The only one who actually sort of ended up getting fucked in a weird way was Big, because Big was like way better at the other tournaments than they were at Flashpoint, so they maybe should have won the tournament. But aside from that, I agree, mate. Like we actually got so lucky with the team because it's not just getting quality teams; you need to actually play well at the tournament as well. Even MIBR turned out to be way better than you'd expect.
So I know you'll have to cast your mind back a little bit, but like some of the just brilliant storylines that emerged, right? So first up, the Cloud9. I know, like, obviously, yeah, I know, right? Because Henry had talked big, said he was going to win the event. Now, to Henry's credit, because I will always like facts are important over narrative, right? Henry did say they were going to win the event before Big. Fnatic.
Yes, before the teams were invited.
Yeah, before all those teams had come up. And, looking at that diminished field, there was an argument on paper maybe Cloud9 could have done it, right? Maybe. Could have been there or thereabouts. But this, because I was obviously watching the broadcast. I mean, me and fucking Henry were getting up and watching all the Cloud9 games together. It was just so good for the show that Cloud9 had turned up, talked big, and then sort of flopped at the event.
Oh, it's hilarious.
In retrospect, though, because you did do a tweet where you said everyone's banging on Cloud9, wait until Virtus.Pro and OG finish, in the semi-finals or whatever, it'll put it in a new light. Holy shit, Virtus.Pro and OG were the fucking finalists.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's what she did. I didn't expect them to come number 1 and number 2. I thought they'd maybe come like both top 4 or something, But I actually did think that was the part that was really unfair, is people didn't realize, first of all, Cloud9 was already in the hardest group. And then the whole group got thrown into disarray. Because remember, why did they even have to play OG in that lower match? Because OG themselves lost to Genji with 2 stand-ins. So, like, the amount of things that had to go wrong for Cloud9 basically are brutal. Like, they obviously are clearly better than last place at that tournament. Like, there's a bunch of teams that made the playoffs, like Dignitas, that are worse than Cloud9. Just the problem is, like, it just looks bad. Like, listen, there's no context in the world makes last place ever sound reasonable. You spent $6 million or whatever. Like
$20 million for this.
There's no context that'll get you out of that one. Let's be real.
But when he posted that fucking picture of him in the cloud makeup,
it's amazing.
Oh fuck! You have no idea, like, because obviously Henry was like, "I've just got something to do, Richard." Like he was Captain Oates, like going out for a walk in the snow. And then I just saw his Twitter feed. It's just Henry and fucking clown. I'm crying. I'll fucking cry well after it.
No. When the match took place where it was OG versus Cloud9 in that like losers match in that group, right? Because of the way it worked already, we knew based on the pinnacle points thing we were doing, that like whoever lost that matchup, right, was going to have to do the forfeit, which for that one, if people remember, was dressing like an actual clown and dancing. And so the actual 2 people that match was between was if Cloud9 had won the match, I would have had to dress as the clown. And because OG won it, it was Semler who had to dress as the clown. So I was even watching that match like, you beauty, Alexi B. Like, I was loving it because obviously OG just came good, didn't they? Like from that on in the event, they were good.
You agreed to wear a fucking clown outfit on a broadcast.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where Monty arranged it all and thought it was hilarious. And I only found out about this on like the last day. So I was just going to go along with it. And luckily it didn't happen. So it doesn't matter. No, well, here's the key thing.
Would you have done it?
No one will ever have to know whether I would have done it because it didn't happen, did it? So I would have certainly thought about it, like chatted weasel outfit or something. I don't know.
Fair play to Semler, he lent into it. It reminded me of that fucking Bronson movie Tom Hardy did.
Terrible, didn't he? I
Yeah.
know. He was way too earnest about it. That was the problem.
Yeah, he was fully in on the clown. Fucking behavior. Also, you got the
people that have watched it. Just watch it because it's just a mental movie.
No, it is mental.
It's so ridiculous.
It's one of those things where at some point you are going to look back. I mean, there was all of the skits were like that. The fucking Thorin digging around the ruins at fucking Katowice, finding Flusher's mouse, and Dr. Anders just taking pills and talking about.
Mate, some of the jokes were slept on so hard in those skits. Like, mate, the one where I literally go and it's where I'm exploring the ruins of Katowice, right?
I know, and you found Flusher's mouse, mate.
It's where I say the line in it, though, where I go, like, 50,000 were said to have gathered here, because obviously they kept lying every time, but for free bread and circuses, because obviously you just get all those fucking free, fucking hot dogs or whatever when you go in the event. Like, I thought it was all fire, mate. It was straight fire.
Did you write it all? Did you have people helping you with it?
Depends which skit it was. Some of them I wrote, some other people wrote. It was more like a group of approach generally. Like the idea was we would get the script and like anyone could throw in like a funny line that they thought.
Nice, just like a genuine writer's room.
Yeah, it was cool.
You also got MIBR as well. I mean, like this new MIBR.
You're all popping off, mate.
Yeah, which I mean, listen, I don't know if you got to hang out with those guys and sort of see like the new school of the MIBR players. But like I think this year, that for me is a team to definitely watch. When it was thrown together.
Sure.
Yeah, well, when it was thrown together, I didn't have high hopes, but just the way, like, they went to that event and they had some absolutely, like, gangbuster performances on Nuke. And, imagine, like, this was a roster that was thrown together just for the purposes of Flashpoint on short-term contracts. Yes. They went there, they had, like, a week, 10 days of, like, actual solid practice. And they've nailed one of the more complicated and intricate maps in Counter-Strike in, like, a record time. And they were competing very well. I mean, like, they took them out off OG. Obviously, I think they lost eventually to Fnatic, but they were very competitive to watch. Beating Forza was that's a solid result for a new team. Took them out off big. Like they lost games, sure, but they had some also impressive results and impressive performances. They were competitive a lot more than they should have been under the circumstances.
Oh, I think that team was actually like, it's a shame again, unfortunately. Like, the other part of it is they could even have done even better at this tournament. Like, they were nearly always in every single game. That was the most impressive thing. And, like you say, mate, on Nuke, they no joke are one of the best teams in the whole tournament on Nuke. Like, that's not a joke map that you put a fucking POG team in with a banned player and just think you're going to mess around. Like, that's just, to me, I don't know who it was who was doing it. Maybe it was Korgu. Maybe they have some analysts behind the scenes. But someone was doing their fucking homework in that team. Like, they came prepared for those games. Like, on Nuke especially, they were actually pretty legit. And KNG was actually playing unreal in this stuff. Him and VSM were really good in this tournament. Like, they were actually, like, they played like they had no fear. I actually found them a very enjoyable team to watch. Yeah,
well, I mean, it was like the old Brazilian lineup back when they burst through, pre-luminosity. I mean, there were definitely shades of that. And, I'll get to the other part. That was another sort of bit of drama that happened. Obviously, there was all of that stuff around the whole stream sniping issue, having the stream on in the background. I'll say one thing that Flashpoint should get credit for, and certainly I would say Kogu and MIBR should get credit for, was the way it was all handled very quickly and professionally. Because, somebody took a screenshot, goes to Reddit, you know how it is. And it seemed to be resolved within like 24 hours. The reason I was willing to sort of be a bit forgiving to Kogu and all, they weren't around when the drama happened previously at the Blast. They didn't exist as a team. Kogu wasn't working as a coach. So I'm willing to say live and let live. But I mean, it wasn't like he wasn't punished. I mean, what was it, like 10 grand fine? Yeah, it's not to be fucking sniffed at all. And I thought you guys just handled it really well and knocked it out the park. Was there a little bit of trepidation when that happened? Like, were you guys thinking, fucking hell, not a big, integrity drama around our league? Or was it just fairly cut and dry, let's go and do this?
Like, the main thing for me was more along the lines of, like, This might sound weird because, again, you're going to have to, as a fan, realize that you are just a fan on Reddit. So you can say any opinion you want, whereas like the opinion that we give officially in our capacity of our jobs carries a certain weight and responsibility. So the problem with me was this, was I actually had to figure out initially, like what even is our jurisdiction? Like do we have to actually have caught them doing it? Like how does they ever? Because remember, it doesn't matter that you think the person's guilty. You have to like know, like, do I have rules against this? What would they be? So essentially, what we had to figure out was, because listen, I'll tell you right now, and you've seen it this year, there are TOs who absolutely not only don't want to deal with these issues, if possible, they won't. Like, unless you can put their feet to the fire, they'll just leave it. Because part of the other issue is this. Players themselves, I know you all saw them boycott that fucking blast match. You think they all have integrity. They don't. If players can get away with stuff, they'll be like, well, show me the rules where it says I can't explicitly do that. The point is, there is nearly always a clause in rule sets that says something along the lines of, it's usually considered like a sportsmanship clause. So either it will be like, you can't bring the tournament in a disrepute,
or anything that violates the spirit of the game.
Exactly. It's nearly always like that, as you see, like spirity, integrity. It's one of these terms will be used like as a catch-all essentially. So what I basically wanted to do was just get it resolved as quickly as possible. So it was actually, like I said on that past episode, it was my suggestion to make it a fine, because the good thing about a fine is it doesn't fuck up the tournament. Like, it doesn't make you lose a map or a veto. It doesn't affect the actual outcome of the game. It just means you get punished for what you did. In this case, a tangible amount, like $10,000 is no joke, especially a guy who's just on a short-term contract. But then it also shows that it's a serious fine though. Like 10,000 is not a joke. People can't just be tossing those away. So I think, to me, this is also where it's actually key to have people like Monty involved with the project. He's obviously like the commissioner, because it's different if you're just involved with a guy who's from another business. Is that even illegal? No, Monty understands it's a terrible look for the company. So he knows that we had to do something pretty quickly. So I would say we got the wheels in motion on that one pretty quickly. I think we came with the right decision in the end.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, there were people messaging me as well going, MIBR at it again. Like, don't pass the sins of the Fallen group. I mean, listen, if you want to have a look at the difference in culture now you've got between this MIBR lineup and the old MIBR lineup that I castigated and completely stand by all of that criticism, just simply look at the apology Kogu offered. Look at how quickly and succinctly he said, I was to blame. I didn't know, but that's not an excuse. I'm gonna give this money to a charity in Brazil. Like, we're utterly sorry, and I've lived a career where all about integrity, and I'm aghast to have done anything that violates the spirit of the game. Let's move on. He was very professional. Now link it. Contrast that to what Dead did. Wasn't me. They just full on. Never did it. You're on video, never did it, wasn't me. Look at all the good things I've done in the past, like, calls to authority. It's like, fucking hell. So for me, it was day and night, and it was a little bit saddened to see fans kind of like, listen, that MIBR core.
Someone's phone is near the.
Someone's having a beep.
Is that me, possibly?
No, I think it's Richard.
Nah, hang on, sorry, mate. I got my phone on fucking.
Sorry. It's just the angle, I think, probably.
No, it's just me. My mixer picks it up, mate. I get it's a piece of shit, so I get like fucking air traffic control in my ears and all sorts of local police radio. But anyway, so I don't want fans going out and basically banging on this new MIBR because of what the old core of MIBR
they dealt with it very responsibly. The way you should. That's a great example for kids.
Yeah, totally. So the other thing I want to talk about, just from the games, and then we'll do a few stories, do viewer questions, and we'll all have a lovely, nice early night, was just obviously the runs of the sort of standout teams that we had. And listen, I know Virtus.Pro ended up winning the whole event, so we'll maybe do them second. I definitely want to talk about OG and kind of like this. What a huge resurgence this was for an OG team. That there were some question marks. There were question marks about what their future might look like. Yes, as you alluded to, they had that run at the IEM event and whatnot. But this is a team that, while it's been slow and steadily improving, and if you go and look since Alexi B sort of came in, it has been a slow uptick. Sometimes slow isn't what people want in esports. And and certainly not in CS. Well, OG were amazing at this event, and even the question mark players like MBK has been out of form. Issa was the big one. Can he get out of form? These things started looking really, really good. I mean, when it really clicked with me that they were definitely a team that could like win the whole event, and maybe arguably should have, was like the way that the big game. They when they 2-0'd Big, who I thought maybe Big were gonna go to the finals. They did it. They did everything that the old OG prior to Flashpoint wasn't doing, and that was, they didn't hold down their maps necessarily. They did it here. When it went to overtime, or if it ever got close, they would choke and they would throw it away at the last hurdle. That was like an OG feature. They actually were able to beat Big in overtime. I couldn't believe it. Overtime on Dust 2, OG, a map they've lost like 16-14 or 19-17 so many times in the past. So this was a really, really good sign going into it. And I think all told, while they're, I'm sure, bitterly disappointed not to win the final, like things are looking really, really good if you're an OG fan. And as I've said many times on the podcast, I think it just continues to cement Alexi B's reputation as being a great IGL.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you watched this event, remember that when the event ended, even though VP won the final, the only team who beat VP in a series was actually OG. They beat them in the group final earlier on, way back at the beginning of the tournament. So by the end of the tournament, they'd beaten basically everyone good at the tournament. So I think actually, yeah, the team that comes out of this event looking the best is OG, especially when you add in this context. If people don't know, to my knowledge, they actually are fully honoring that ban of Rogger, and he does not participate in the game at all.
Yeah.
So as a result, when I was hearing their comms, and obviously I've many, many times praised Alexi B, because he's like one of the guys who, if you listen to the comms, comes off sounding the best of all. Like his reads are amazing, seems to have a really good mind for the game. Like you don't hear Rogger. Like they really were having to operate without a coach. So I think the result in itself actually suggests a lot about the potential of the squad. I even heard some crazy thing from Alexi B when I did a podcast with him recently, which is insane if you know this detail, because I didn't myself, which is apparently when Mantu played for the alternate attacks team before he joined OG, he wasn't even an AWPer. Apparently he was just a rifle player, and he just became an AWPer in OG. Like that is insane. So that whole story is like some movie level shit when you consider like they were all like rejects from other teams. They brought the project together. I still think it's flawed. I still think there's a lot of issues they have as a squad, but just what they're being able to get to after about roughly a year is pretty impressive actually. Like they were really close to winning this whole tournament. They were in position to. They beat basically everyone good. I also think it's actually a very positive sign that they did well in this tournament, because I did see some of the teams looked like the pressure of the prize money got to them. Like I think Big's a perfect example. I think Big could have won the whole tournament, but they looked like squeaky bomb time happened when it was the big money games, and they blew a bunch of big matches that on paper was supposed to be theirs. So I think OG looked fantastic. They still had a lot of key flaws, but the difference is, like you say, in the past, they would always lose every fucking 14-14 game, or they win your map and then they lose theirs, so it's still a super close game. Like they sort of overcame a lot of the teething problems that they seem to have had earlier this year. They look like actually a team I'd love to watch again play in a big tournament now.
Yeah, I mean, again, when we start getting them come thick and fast, I'm going to be intrigued to see if they can sort of continue their development. I mean, there's so many great pieces there. I'm still got a few question marks about like long-term form for Issa, but Mantu remains one of the finds of 2020, as we talked about in the last show. Valda, I still think, is one of the most cultured players in the game.
Oh, sick.
I'll never renounce MBK as the guy that's going to do all the dirty work for a team.
Stuff, if people don't know, he's still doing stuff behind the scenes you don't see.
Yeah, exactly. And Alexi B unquestionably has proved himself and sort of made all that Ents palaver, which we'll talk about in a bit.
That looking fucking amazing, hasn't
he?
Like,
mate. All of, literally all of the shit that they've done recently just makes Alexi B look like an absolute godhead. So, but with that said, obviously we have to talk about Virtus.Pro. I was astounded. I mean, when you talk about that streak, of course, that included this mad run that they had, and I couldn't have foresaw. Like everyone was saying, Virtus.Pro were good, Virtus.Pro legit. They're in good form. They're doing this, they're doing that. I couldn't have foresaw that they were going to win the whole thing.
I'll tell you right now, I picked against them almost every single time because my whole premise was like this. Like, they're clearly a really good team at upsetting people. Like, if you've never played them before, you're in for a fucking hard time. It's not like playing just a random team. But I just kept thinking, this is the mistake I made, and I'll fully admit it now, which is the flaw of being an analyst is because you see everything in the game, you can make this classic mistake, which is your logic goes like this. Right? I think I know why what they're doing is wrong. Therefore, and this is the flaw, other people will see that and they'll shut it down. But that's where I was wrong. The things they did wrong, or I think were flawed, were still there. It's just nobody could stop them. So fair play. They deserve to win.
Yeah, but I mean, it's crazy because for me, this is a team that they're still sort of carrying this like it should be dead weight. It shouldn't work. I think I've been like mega critical of Sanji a number of times, having watched Virtus.Pro time and time again. Always felt underwhelming, but again, something recently seems to have just clicked with the whole lineup. Everyone's on the same page in terms of what we're doing, and like Sanji was doing like so much important work, a player that like never gets a lot of plaudits or a lot of credit, and Quicket had some like unbelievable.
Since this is by the numbers, I'll give you some fucking gold because here's a new meme I'm introducing. Everyone's fucked it up with Sanji because what they don't understand is this. I agree with you. My problem with Sanji is this. First of all, when you watch him play, does some really boneheaded shit, and you just think, "What the fuck is this guy doing?" But even worse than that, obviously they did that thing where when James was at his worst saving, they used to make Sanji use a Mac 10 all game to farm the money for James. Like,
so he can have the AWP, yeah.
So here's the angle we need to come with now. Because my problem is this. It's one thing if Thorin says Smith's is shit at AWP or whatever. If you keep giving Smiths an AWP, you believe he is good at AWP, and you're actually telling me the opposite, right? In this case, it looks like Virtus.Pro themselves don't respect Sanji. They treat him like shit. Like, why is Sanji fucking James Reek? That's what I want to know.
I know.
Like, you're not Sanji anymore. You're Reek now. Like, why is he just not him treated like another human on the team? Like,
I know. No, it's wild.
Farming guns for James.
But the difference in the past has been like, even with that sort of hampering, it's like you say, he's made some boneheaded plays, he's done some dumb stuff, but it's hard to be fucking dialed in when you're essentially the guy that's like,
he's everything, decoy, fucking bought everything.
yeah, like Jim has his own bank account, but Sanji's his savings account essentially, and it's like, that's mad. It's a mad way to sort of run a squad. And like, it's definitely affected Sanji's reputation and perception. And I myself will admit I've fallen into that trap of not giving him a fair shake. But what was different here was, even with those limitations, he made plays. He made big plays.
Oh, he did. He had some really good plays.
Big rounds.
Pistols, especially, I've noticed. He's mad.
Yeah. I mean, he's money in the bank in a pistol round, which is worth its weight in gold, obviously, in any meta of Counter-Strike. But then on top of that, you've got Quicket moving forward, like Yakindar. I got his name wrong before on one previous episode where I can't remember what I called him, but whatever, fuck it, it doesn't matter. Respect the name now. He's been playing well. It's mad. These are players that were slept on, that no one really sort of heard of. Like Quicket and Buster were meant to be the dream duo. Yeah. Jim proved himself as being a good AWP statistically, had that run at the major, but all the memes around him being basically a bot when he doesn't have an AWP, and actually not being a very aggressive player with an AWP, being a bit too conservative, a bit too reserved.
Still does that a bit, but
I agree. I think it's a valid criticism.
He's a bit more responsible now for sure.
But
there's another reason I obviously also did pick against VP a lot. I also do just hate Jim's playing style. Like, it is the antithesis of what I want to see in Counter-Strike. Yeah. I'll give him credit when it works. I have to give you credit. It works. Like, if you can actually do that, it's a really hard style to make work. But in this tournament, for sure, he made it work. Like, definitely, it was a positive more than a negative, I would say, in this event.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting as well. Someone just brought this up in the chat actually. He did an interview recently when like he was asked about all of the memes and stuff.
He made it. Yeah, he seemed quite like self-reflective, didn't he?
Yeah, he said he should have done more with it and should have could have cashed in. I mean, listen, it's like you've always said, this is a guy who looks like Jesus and is known for saving. Like, please, like,
you lean into it exactly.
How much of a fucking layup do you need? So yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, overall, I thought Virtus.Pro, that last series, between OG and Virtus.Pro was great. And the only thing that hampered it really was the broadcast limitations.
I'd also say as well, like the other thing that's crazy about this particular result for Virtus.Pro is that it did just come out of nowhere, because before the qualifier for this event, which is what somehow sparked this like run to becoming good again, they were completely on the outs. Like if no one remembers, that team was basically irrelevant this year. They did fucking nothing. No one cared about them. Like remember, it was over a year ago. It was the last major that they would do. They had the major, then they had the blast afterwards that they won. Then they joined Virtus.Pro. That was the end of the story for this team. So the idea they come out of the black hole and then win this entire event. Remember, for an event like them, for a team like them, rather, winning 500k is fucking enormous. Like, I think there's something crazy. Like, I think winning that event makes them something mad, you know, like a top 2 team of the whole year or something mad in terms of prize money. Like, so for these players, this was a big deal to win this one. And the credibility. Look at the amount of good teams they had to beat. Like, I thought loads of these teams were going to knock them out eventually.
Anyway, but yeah, on the point of the money, I think you're right as well. Like, because wasn't there some like mad story about how like these guys had like weird fucking like shitty contracts in their previous team and owed all this money and everything? It's like a little bit of hunger goes a long, long way, and it definitely showed. Like you say, I mean, no more than with a team like Big, who've been number 1 in recent memory. And probably could have had a much deeper run, probably could have done better. But yeah, actually, some of the big name performers didn't turn up.
By the way, just because maybe someone in your chat can remember the details, because I might have missed like a detail, but the story's genuinely right? We did an episode just before Flashpoint began of the Flashpoint Q&A that me and Monty do each like Wednesday or whatever. And we did one where we had what's his name? Jerry from Fours come on.
Oh, yeah.
And on it, right, someone asks him one of those questions. And what I love it when people accidentally like betray the way their whole worldview is by how they answer a question, right? So when someone asks him something along the lines of like, you know, why hasn't one of you like, you know, joined Navi, or why, you know, like Jerry, surely you must have had, you know, offers to be in IGL. He basically gave an answer where, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, someone who watched it, but he essentially, like, his answer was mad dark, mate, because he sort of said something along the lines of like, but why would I do that though? You know, like, I mean, I even contacted my manager and he was like, why are you talking to other teams? And I was like, yeah, you're right, actually, you know, why would I do that? He just sat there the whole time like, yeah, why would, the fuck's this guy talking about? Is he aware he's actually like an indentured servant? Like, there's not even any poaching rules in CS for fuck's sake.
I know,
like,
do what you fucking want, mate.
He said that alone told you why, like, in Brazil and like Eastern Europe, you all just stay in the same teams. You all just stay in, aren't you? Like, because they just tell you like they own you. They just do.
No joke. All the CIS regions like
guys must have been in that situation years before. Come on, who the fuck was Vanguard?
And in China, obviously they just literally just come with a gun to your house and say, you throw matches for me now. So that's how that works. So anyway, I think that wraps up all the Flashpoint. Was there any additional stuff you want to add about the Flashpoint?
You got off easy, if anything, mate. You didn't even get banned, you cheating little cunt. Listen, all I'm going to say is this, Skidoo.
Call back.
If you're watching right now, you're not, because you're in Valorant. Because listen, you never fucking tried in CS. You never put in the hours. You wouldn't be watching even if this was a Valorant show. But if you are watching, I know you didn't use the AWP once in that game, you little fucking rat. I know you definitely knew that you were throwing the game. You could have thrown him in afterwards. You said nothing, and just because you didn't accept the skins, listen, I'll give you credit on that one part. You did pull. You passed the Macaulay test. You could have gotten away scot-free at the airport, or you could have made time for Wayne Grow. My mistake, Rich's mistake, is we make time for the Wayne Grow.
Oh, I always make time for Wayne Grow.
Wayne Grow's always going to get me in the end, mate. I know that. I've accepted that. That's one of the few areas of that movie, by the way, that really tells you where someone comes out mentally, because I'm not going to give the spoiler if people don't know it. But that one moment, anyone who sits there and goes, but why would he do it? You don't get that character at all. You don't get it at all. Guys, that's the one part. The reason why that's an amazing moment is because if you know anything about that character, he had to take care of the Wayne Grow guy.
Yeah, of course.
Skadoodle, fair play. You got away with it. You didn't go to the loot drop, but we all know what was really going on in that game. You little fucking rat.
How could you not as well, though? I mean, like, how could you not go and get Wayne Grow, especially after you turn up at Danny Trejo's house and he's down there and he's all mashed up and he's going, I can't feel my legs. What's happened?
And when he was just asking for his wife,
where's my Anna? Where's my Anna? And she's dead in the next room. And then he goes, don't leave me like this, man. I'm all messed up. Like, yeah, 100% making time for Wayne Grow. You better believe. I don't care how fine that woman is. Stay in the fucking car. I got some shit to take care of. Like,
that movie's like religion to me.
Yeah, of course it is.
Too good. It's too good.
I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but when it came out, I was super hyped about it. Obvious, like multiple reasons.
Oh, obviously.
And I had a girlfriend at the time, and went to the cinema, and
What did she say? Some absolute clanger line.
No, but like you don't understand. Like she was fucking like right.
Talking through the movie and everything.
No, not even that. Oh, not even that. Sighing, mate. Sighing. Like she don't want to be there. Like you're watching one of the best
movies ever.
Yeah, you're watching one of the best movies ever fucking made. Right, and you're gonna sit there and like sigh, like you're not having a good time. Like what I'm supporting, like that, right? That all those actors at the top of their fucking game, even Sizemore, like he's took 5 minutes out of his life to stop eating ass and put in a good fucking performance, right?
Yeah.
And you're gonna sit there and sigh all the way. Right? So I broke up with her immediately after the movie. Like no joke, I shit you not. I shit you not.
The heat was off after that.
Mate, like we've been together months. I just broke up with her. I was like, no way. Like you can't disrespect. Like I've just seen something amazing, and the memory of it is always going to be tainted by you sighing and being all mad. And saying, nah, it's not happening. Like,
did you just say nah? Because the heat was off. That was the problem. The heat was off for you.
I see what you did there. Yeah, not bad. Not your best, but not bad.
I know, whatever. It's whatever, isn't it?
Right. So anyway, let's do a couple of the big stories. Then we'll do viewer questions. The stories so far as we segue out of 2020 and into 2021. It's all about leaving, high profile leaving. Let's start with Twistzz leaving. It's been a relatively professional show now. It's like, Brexit means Brexit. Let's get it in. So yeah, we'll talk about Twistzz leaving Team Liquid. Team Liquid had a pretty rough end to well, it wasn't the roughest end of the year because I guess they did make it to that final. But Moses was feeling the pressure.
Sure.
Being called a ball fraud, all of that. We've already talked about it. But Twistzz leaving the team, sort of, I guess, caught a lot of people by surprise. Me, not so much, because I made a video about it for Deserto and put it up and saying, listen, I think Twistzz probably is the make weight here and has to be cut from the team so they can bring somebody else in. He's the big star, the guy who should be performing week in, week out and being as amazing as we all know he can be, but he isn't doing it. They need an AWPer. They need an IGL. You have to say you can't cut Stewie. It's not his fault. He took one for the team, whether it's through hubris or whether it's through necessity. Let you decide that. But you don't tell a guy, right, you're an AWPer and an IGL now, and your stats are bad. Fuck you, we're cutting you. That's like what JW did to Golden. You don't shout out to JW. No, you don't do that, right? So I said it had to be Twistzz. And so I put a video up saying it. Mate, all the Twistzz fans, because he's got nice hair and that. All the Zoomers, that's all they care about is hair. Right, so I had to grow mine back, didn't I? Just to keep my audience. And, they're all talking about, oh, yeah, Twistzz is one of the best players in the world. Playing shit at the moment, though. It has been well.
Exactly, yeah. That's when you realise what noob CS fans are. Because here's the big problem in Counter-Strike I noticed years ago, is the person you can never get them to cut is the star player who just doesn't have it anymore. Because the problem is, because it used to be a star player, in their brain, it's just a permanent frag movie playing in it. So, think about the argument here, Richard, right? If he was doing any of the shit he did 2 years ago, you wouldn't be asking for him to cut, would you? You'd be going up.
Not even that. There would be no discussion about Team Liquid underachieving because by definition of his performances, they would be achieving. So, yeah, it was a weird one. Then when he announced that he was leaving on air, by the way, which is unprecedented. Yeah, mate, I think he's had it fucking bottled up. I think he's wanted out.
Like he was doing something a bit passive aggressive with the way he did that. Well,
I don't want to go that far. I think more likely what he was doing was it was the biggest opportunity to let people know he was available. Like he still wants to play. He's not moving to Valorant apparently. So
cool.
yeah, which is good for him. It would be a massive waste if he did.
Man, that would be tragic for Counter-Strike in itself. Remember, he's one of those people, if people don't know, where
that would be our Sinatra from Overwatch, essentially.
He's one of these people who, like, whether or not he's good now, this is why it's actually an interesting discussion to have. The reason it's precarious to remove him is because it's totally justified in terms of play, but the problem is the potential of a player like that is so enormous that it can absolutely wreck your whole franchise. Like, maybe he goes and be, like, for example, it wouldn't happen now because of where they're at, but in the old world where they were all NA teams, God forbid he'd gone to a Cloud9 and then reinvented himself there. Like, that's the end of the world if you're the Team Liquid guys. Yeah,
totally. So, I mean, you know, I want to get your take on it. I think, like, for me, and then we'll talk about the proposed solution to it. I think something had to give at this point. I didn't want you go back and look at the tape, but all through 2020, I'm like, don't make your ass change, guys. You were number one at the end of 2019. You can be there again, work through your problems, you know. But like, they're just a bunch of emo cunts, and they were out of shit.
Yes.
And I'm also gonna say this: I love you, Jason, dearly. You're one of my best friends. But I don't think you were bringing a lot to the table in terms of solutions at the time they needed those solutions. Now, that might be something that doesn't happen long term. That might be something that you've worked on. You've got these new ideas with a new guy coming in. But that team went from event to event, making the same mistakes, looking the same, doing the same level of performances, and playing like they didn't want to be there after I'm and looking miserable and looking emo. If you only sing when you win, and I got no respect for you. Right, because it's about what you do when times are hard, and too many of the Liquid players were insular and in themselves. And it's like, listen, I think Jason can be a great motivator. He's a nice guy, but there's got to be more to that. Sometimes you've got to be able to fucking, you know, read people a riot act. It can't just be nice guy, buddy. I'm the adult in the room here, but I'm also America's cheerleader. Or, you know, I don't know too much about what's going in there, but it just looked to me that like they were a team that was static when he took over, and then they hit a period where the only direction they went in was down. And, you know, the coach has to take a little bit of responsibility with that, same as the players. And I'm not going to fucking pretend Moses is super coach just because I love that man. Like,
no, I think you're making a totally valid point because, for example, like we were critical of Adren when that team dropped off, of course, because what you do is you look at the same way with Moses, you go look at the team you've got, the potential they have, some of the good games they have. Now you have to take some of the credit for the losses as well, of course. Like like that's one of the problems I have with that team, and actually in general with actually maybe Moses' administration as well. Is when I look at their talent, there's other squads I can trust could play themselves back into form or they'll make a change. This Team Liquid squad doesn't look very self-directed at all. They look like you have to do everything. Like in my opinion, you leave them to their own devices, they'll just join the server every time. The results will be what they are, and they'll just say whatever. It is what it is. Like they don't seem like people who are like super driven, killing themselves to make changes, update the player book. So in my opinion, the coach has an enormous impact on this team. It's why way back in the day, I actually elevated Zeus to the top of my sort of coaching list when he had them at number 2 in the world. I thought it was unbelievable what he was able to do with that group of players. Because unlike a lot of the other teams in the world, Team Liquid doesn't really have like natural leaders and stars and figures like that. Like think about who their 2-star players are now. You have Elige, who out of choice used to just say nothing while playing, and you have Naf, who's a super sleepy guy, where the meme really is he's like a fucking sloth, isn't he? Just chills. Like there aren't natural leaders in Team Liquid. Like Stewie's about the closest you come to it because he sort of embraced that role as a way to redefine his career. So in my opinion, I think Moses has to do a lot with this Team Liquid squad, but I do think Twistzz is the right player to remove because in line with what I was saying, of all the names in the team, I know his potential is enormous. I still think if he gets his shit together, this very year he could be the best player in all of North America. He's got insane talent, but he wasn't doing it for ages now. The entire year he almost just took off. Like he looked way worse. He got completely lost in terms of the roles in the team. Like he looked like he was doing fuck all basically. And so if that's the case, they weren't making use of his talents anyway. Like I think this is one of those examples of a move. It's a bit like the Woxic leaving Cloud9. It's good for everyone. Like if he can go elsewhere, build a team around him, rediscover who he is as a player, because he's got so many years left in the tank. He's a super young player with enormous skill level. Like he could completely redefine his whole game. And in doing so, be a valuable player on a team in the way that he couldn't right now on Team Liquid. Like I get the sense on Team Liquid, maybe like the role he wants to play just doesn't exist right now. Like maybe someone else does it. Because I know this guy can be a way better player than this, but on Team Liquid, he wasn't a very good player at the end.
The absolute nonsense as well that sort of came out after that DeSerto video I did, and then the announcement hit like 2-3 days later. Because let me just tell you, if you've ever typed out "this aged well," you're a fucking moron. I've got nothing to say to you. You are like not on my intellectual level at all. Like you are 80 IQ at best. There is nothing for us to talk about, and so as a result, people just basically were doing that. Well, this aged well because he went on and had like a good series afterwards.
Right.
Well, it's not about whether or not it ages well. It's a moment. It is an opinion given in a moment in time that can only apply to things that have happened before it. It obviously cannot apply to things that are yet to happen. So yes, it has aged well because it was accurate at the time it was said, and so loads of people were like messaging me like, look, Twistzz owning now. He's amazing. He's had a good series against Big and that. So yeah, you're wrong. Why would anyone cut him? And then of course they cut him. So I just wanted to go through all them comments. This aged well, but I'm not an 80 IQ fucking cunt, am I? So I didn't bother. So. But like then the chat on the video pivoted to nice one, mate, you made him leave.
Just control the whole world now. I always love that, by the way, because you know that whole angle.
Dance puppets.
There's two angles. One is either all you do is just talk shit on players and get paid for it. It's like, first of all, chance would be a fucking fine thing. Like if only Richard, if only that was our only skill set we had to have.
Oh mate, I'd love it.
I know. I'd have had to put.
I'd repurpose
hours on input and all that raw data. Like, turns out it would have been cool, wouldn't it?
I would repurpose my YouTube channel today to just be called "Why Players Are Cunts," and I would upload a video every day for every player in every esport, picking out all of their quirks. Well, mate, if I can monetize that.
By the way, speaking of that, though, then to take it to a further level of Twilight Zone level initial episode premise, now we control the actual universe with our opinions, Richard. The most patently ridiculous of all the possible premises. Like, best case scenario, Richard making that video just made them think, yeah, maybe he's got a point there. It definitely didn't just go, what? Richard was fire him. It's like, listen, if you seen how many years I was saying Skadoodle was washed, I wish I could fire motherfuckers using my Twitter account. Be a very different world we'd live in, believe me.
And so they turned to the solution, which, funnily enough, was the one that I suggested as like from the viewer question, my fantasy. CS, not my sexual fantasy, obviously, my fantasy, my Counter-Strike fantasy, like as in fantasy football, that we would move, which is you bring Fallen in, and that's what's been.
I will say this. I've made a lot of fun of him in the past. We even mentioned it ourselves, like joking, like you should get Kusta in the Team Liquid or whatever. Basically, this is his Kusta move, though. Because I tell you what, I've made fun of Moses a lot over the years.
Really?
He's one of the most ridiculous true believers in the MIBR players, by the way. Like, joking. If you put a gun to Moses' head and said, will Fallen ever win another major? I think he might.
Like we did that time in Ely.
No, but no joke. He might actually say yes. Like, he really believes, like, no joke, he truly believes in Fallen and like
no, he does.
Cold Zero and maybe Taco. He will never give up on those guys ever. So, but fair play though, because if you actually do, this is exactly the time to do a move like this. Like, I actually think this move is fire, Richard. Like, I can see why you suggested it because it's an example of a move where, you know how I give all that context there about how like Twistzz isn't playing well now, but maybe for someone else he can play well. It's like that with Fallen. Like, as an actual raw player in a vacuum, there's no universe at all that I would recruit Fallen. But in the context of what Liquid specifically need right now, like experience, shot caller, it's actually the perfect player. It's amazing that this player is available. It's actually a really good move, I think.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think all the timing's right, and it ticks all the boxes for me. Now, if you get dog shit Fallen, right, who can't play as an AWPer, and let's also say is so tactically bereft, he fucks them up on Inferno, which is a map they actually have in their locker right now. You know, if that all happens, then it's a disaster. But I think the thing you have to remember is Team Liquid at the time all of this has popped off are 17th or whatever in the fucking world. It's so unacceptable. It's so unacceptable that the odds are, the sheer odds are that just by virtue of having a competent AWPer, a competent primary IGL, the only way has to be up. Yes. And if they get back in the top 10, get a win under the belt, maybe win one of the big tournaments coming up soon, all of a sudden it's going to look like fucking genius. It's going to look like an inspired decision. So I'm all for it, mate. I think this is the right call to make. It was why I alluded to it in my fantasy thing. It's kind of weird. It's another one of those situations where I've like, well, this show in particular, it only seems to happen when we come together. Certainly not when we're making predictions alone on our Twitter feed. But, you know, when we come together, it's like this weird prescience happens. Like we're on that fucking spice melange. Not the kind of spice you get in Liverpool. This kind of spice you get on planet Arrakis.
The only spice they think in Liverpool is like fucking Nando's. I'm like, hey, got fucking spice, you got a fucking...
It's ever, unfortunately...
I'll never be able to handle that fucking accent. It's all be this... Listen, I even come from the north and it's still... Even I'm just like, would you fucking sort it out? Let's speak English or something. You know, fucking...
No, I mean, it's not an easy on the ear accent. It's not I still prefer
I'm not the thieving. I'm not a fan of that either.
he's doing all the bits, and he's doing all the bits. And the thieving and that. Yeah, definitely. No thieves where we grew up. Definitely none. Anyway, the other big leaving, the parting of the ways. This one definitely out of left field. Kassad's in. He's in the Colossus.
Yeah, that's how amazing that is. That we didn't even get out of 2020 before Henry already lost someone from the team. Like, mate, the coach has already tapped out. The year hasn't even ended. He only got the team like 3 months ago.
No, but it's what's mental.
We can't even wait until 2021. He's like, I'm out. No, but mate, the year's ended. There's not even any tournaments. I must leave now.
I know. Here's what's mental though. We've done that show, and that's just percolating in his head. Like Henry's been on the show. Like, makes me wonder what that calculator was calculating every fucking minute. How much it was costing him to not fucking get rid of Kassad, probably. Like, it was fucking. But yeah, I agree with you. What a way that like. Listen, I'm ambivalent about this. Like, I'm kind of torn. I think on the one hand, I think, look, if something ain't working. Like, one of the things I definitely hate is, like, in esports that we have this mad sunken cost fallacy because the whole industry is built on sunken cost fallacy. If sunken cost fallacy didn't exist, esports wouldn't exist because it made no sense for 20 years. But, you know, the idea that there's these, like, orgs that, like, never act on things that clearly aren't working, it's like sometimes ripping off the Band-Aid's the right thing to do. But then again, it's like you say, it's very, very early on in the team's development cycle. It's all online tournaments anyway. There have been all these issues. What's going to happen? And it's like, if you remember the way it was framed, Kassad was an integral part of, like, he was the foundation. He was actually the sort of first signing.
Yeah, basically.
It was him and Henry. So for him to be tapped out like 4 months in or whatever is like, it makes me wonder what's gone on there. Like, because I'll be frank, watched every game, so I'm very intimate with, you know, what I've seen as their failings, and I've talked about it. I don't know if it's like there are some players that weren't getting better game to game in terms of making the same mistakes. And like, that's infuriating for a coach. Because if a coach takes the time to sit down and say, nah, and you still fuck up in the same way, then what's the point? Why isn't it going in? You know, it's like very, very hard. But then again, I also don't know if he was doing that. It might be the case that, like, maybe he wasn't. Maybe the reason those mistakes were happening game to game is that Kassad, for whatever reason, wasn't pointing them out and wasn't taking his due diligence. He's said he's off to that Extremum team, which is obviously all the guys from Renegades he'd worked with multiple times. Does make me wonder now if, not a rut, but it's a bit weird to go straight back into your comfort zone like that.
Dodgy, yeah. Especially when you consider, here's the part people, this is why I don't get why people are loving that move. I get it if you were a fan of Renegades / 100 Thieves, you just want to see the team play again. I get that angle, right? But here's what I don't get, is this is basically 100 Thieves minus JKS, the best player. So why are people excited for it as a project, though? Like, that's what I don't get, because basically that's the part that's dodgy, Richard. If this wasn't what it appeared to be on the surface, which is, as they said, essentially Alex and Kassad have a different vision of the game. And so, they're so far apart that there's no point making a compromise. Let's just get a different coach in because we're sticking with Alex. It's going to work. Right. I get that. But here's the problem. If that happens, right, then maybe there's a world in which the turnaround is really quick and like, you want to come and join us? You used to play with us, fine. But the timing of this makes it look as though he just thought, fuck this noise. Actually, I'm just going to go back and play with those guys. We used to be under the makes it sound like that, doesn't it? Which is different. That's different from right. This wasn't working, so this almost makes it sound like he had the two choices. He had that one in his back pocket, and so he's going, actually, you know what? Fuck this. This isn't working.
Could also be a money thing. Cause I've heard that Extremum group has fucking money to burn. Like I don't know if you've heard the same thing, but so
it's a bit sad though. I have to say though, because like to me, Kassad was one of the pieces I was hoping could make Cloud9 really good. Like he was a gamble I thought was worth taking. So even though I'd agree the team hasn't been as good as people hoped it would be, there's still clearly potential. So this is a little bit concerning on the Cloud9 side of things. I wonder who they get now.
Well, I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of top sort of coaches out there that are kind of available. No one immediately springs to mind, but
there's a lot of pressure on Alex as well, in my opinion. If he's if he really was part of the reason behind this, then they basically got all in on you, mate. You better be fucking good.
Yeah, but also as well, I mean, like the one thing I will say is that maybe it might be an unorthodox hiring decision because very much like what we were talking about when it was like broadcast talent and stuff. Henry's come in and said he wants to build a team and he doesn't want it to be the same tired old names on the sheet, That's why we ended up with a player like Messi. Like he's not just done that to save money, because if he did, he could have put him on a much worse contract. He's done it because he's a believer in the talent of the player, and to a certain degree, he's been vindicated based on the performances. So maybe it'll be a name that people aren't expecting and haven't heard of before. So I guess we'll wait and see. Anyway, with that said, let's jump into the viewer questions. I know there's been some other big news and all that happening, but don't worry, guys. We'll be doing another show.
We've got to catch up anyway because we didn't do a question on Flashpoint, so we'll do it like one early next week or something.
Yeah, exactly. So Lonnie just says .com. Have fun time stamping that, Sam. Thank you. Not my problem. Sam's problem. Well, it is for my YouTube channel gets shut down, but Sam's problem. Well.
Then Sam shows you, then he goes.
Then I'll just blame Sam for missing a timestamp. So, Reykjavik on Steam has again. I need to start pre-reading these. Has the Danish influence? Is this a serious one? Oh no, okay. Has the Danish influence from the likes of Mads Olsen and Nikolai Nyholm been a net negative to the scene, or would some other scum have come in and just done the same thing anyway? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I think we'll just look back at Nikolai Nyholm as some sort of guy that has like delusions of grandeur, sees himself as the like fucking Bond villain, but actually his impact on esports in terms of negative impact is going to be very low. Yes. He's not here for the long term. He's not a lifer. Eventually Astralis is going to get flipped and he'll probably fuck off back to his building with a helicopter pad, telling all of his VC mates about his adventures with the gamers. Might make a game himself, whatever. I think he's a cunt because he's a cunt and he's tried to do a lot of things.
Yes.
But listen, the type of cunt who's so inept he can't even get his lies straight. A guy that's been caught out by, like, think about me as being the guy that just catches you consistently. It must drive him mad. Drive him mad because this is a guy that thinks he's really fucking smart and super high level and super intelligent. He got triggered when I just called him a cunt. He slid into my DMs. I said, "You're a cunt, and I'll never be a sycophant to you." Fuck off. Blocked him. He hates you as well. He's called you mentally unstable. It's like, listen, he thinks he's smarter than he is, and like one of the types of people I'll always catch out are the people who think they're the smartest in the room before they even know who's in the room. They don't know nothing about you, but they make a judgment based on their own delusions, based on their own hubris. Nikolai Nyholm's that to a T. I've been putting cunts like him on toast all my life. Now, the guy at the CSPPA, the Mads Holland, This is a different
Kit's
kettle
maybe
of...
not out on that guy, right? He could
Yeah,
do
well,
some big damage potentially in this
well,
position.
this is a different kettle of fish because on the one hand, I like the idea of a fucking guy running a union who's a fucking strong ballsy dude who don't fuck about.
Sure.
But equally as well, I mean, like, he's such a divisive figure in sports, and the more and more you start reading up on it, and I do, is a guy that actually a lot of people who were pro some of his activities when he moved on and went somewhere else, or when they retired, or whatever. There's a lot, in women's football and in football in Denmark and other sports. A lot of people say he's just an arsehole. A lot of people just say he's a cunt who's in it for himself, and he uses these huge sort of like gestures to sort of just make a name for himself. So when he goes to the next thing, everyone shits their britches because the big boy's in the room.
Okay, so he's sort of a PR animal.
Well, kind of, definitely a guy who likes having the reputation of being the big swinging dick. I think he sees himself as a fucking gunslinger, which is, again, ain't nothing wrong with that. But, like, when you look at the first ever strike action we've had was for that pathetic nonsense over at the Blast.
Course, yeah.
Makes me wonder what the fuck he's going to do if left to his machinations. And then you also have to think, he's been in real sports. He understands the problems of having a talent agency and giving out agency advice using intelligence you've acquired from a union. He understands the conflict of interest that creates.
Yes,
there can be no mistake with that. There can be no mistake. It's not like
when a guy like that comes into the space and does that. He essentially the implication would be, if you were being uncharitable, they came into the space to do that because they came in. Basically, this is one of the reasons I'm very nervous about anyone who says they're coming in to be like a governing body or whatever. Because the first thing that you would do if you were a scumbag is go, "I'll take care of seeing that all this is done properly. Now do everything the way we're like." You can just see the fucking scam because, as you say, if you come from the real world where it's all regulated to fuck, like. It's a bit suspicious that you then immediately set about behavior that people would purposely not allow you to in your other space.
Yeah, and so he's one of the whole CSPPA project. It's left me with a lot of mixed feelings. I think everything that's happened recently. I enter 2021 with my expectations being very, very low, and what good I think they'll achieve being very, very limited. But it is what it is. It exists. And as I've said from talking to players who are obviously in the CSPPA, they've all said the same thing. It's like, well, what do we do if we leave and we make another union? We're back to square one, essentially, and we lose any leverage that we had by being in this union, and we've also got a union to compete with that isn't our union. So it's a tough one. But yeah, listen, these things are inevitable. Esports is a growth industry that has very little regulation and has the potential, if you're unscrupulous, to make a lot of profit. You can just tell lies. There's no consequences. You can sign people a terrible contracts and make them do unbelievable things for an unbelievable amount of time. You can bullshit sponsors. They don't know the ins and outs of it. And if you've got mates in the media, you can have them constantly gas you up and support you and actually cloak and cover for your indiscretions and unethical activity. All of these things go on a daily basis in esports. We still haven't got to the point where the sunlight shines in and we disinfect away all the germs. And I don't think we ever will. I think it's too late for that. I think we are this corrupt, broken entity that we are. And we're going to keep limping forward and being a shadow of what we could have been. We're going to be sports. We're going to be sports too, basically. We're not esports anymore. We're sports too. All that FIFA stuff, all that UEFA corruption, we're doing it. It's just smaller scale. It's just less money. Anyway, thanks for the question. BP420. We're complying with the new Twitch rules. He's someone that I'm sure you know, Duncan.
Right, I see. What you mean there.
Yeah,
I got that one now. Okay.
Yeah. Once you guys leave the realm of esports to finally achieve your true dream of becoming adult film superstars, what would your stage names be? I don't know.
So we want to.
I mean, the thing is, like, because I'm called Richard, like, my name has to be Dick, obviously, and then Lewis. I don't even know, like, Dick Loosest. I don't. It's not even a good thing to have a loose dick, is it? I mean, it's not even good, is it? No, probably not, is it? So I don't even know, mate. I don't even know what I would call myself. I mean, the thing is, like, the thing is, when you consider that Well, I can't even say his name actually either. But like, I'm like some atavistic throwback to the horrible days of the 70s where the gimmick was all of the male adult actors were fat, balding, disgusting men because that was the fantasy they were selling to other fat, bald, disgusting men, that it could be you. So I'm like that, basically. So I don't even... I'd probably just have to use my God-given name, wouldn't I? Because that'd be the bit, wouldn't it? Like, it's Richard Lewis. Dick Lewis.
Right, here's my character.
I've got so many. Sam, just have the mute button.
Character's called the Raw Dick Redemption, because all I do is I only raw dog them, but I've been tested and I only have tantric sex with them that takes 6 hours because I'm actually trying to backdoor my way out of the degenerate lifestyle I've gotten into and raise all of human consciousness to such a level that collectively, like the end of Evangelion or something, we all just ascend and I get out of this.
And he's linked it to Evangelion again. Like it's all super cool that you've basically just called yourself Raw Dick Redemption, even though the point was, what would your stage name be? Not what movie would you be in? But a great movie name, the Raw Dick Redemption. But then you've done that, and then just linked it to that weeb shit that you like, that fucking Evangelion.
On the last bit.
Right, anyway, Rez Chi doesn't ask a question, just graciously says, happy holidays, have a great new year in 2021, you filthy animals. Appreciate it. Watch Doge says, petty grievances, by the numbers production. Who are the people in the CSGo scene who will not be receiving Christmas cards this year, but have in past years, who will be receiving Christmas cards? I mean, the obvious one for both of us probably like Scoots doesn't talk to us anymore. I mean, like, the
obvious one.
Yeah, and it's like it's fucked up. I don't know how we end up here. I mean, well, I do. I know the mechanics of how it's all like we've ended up where we are. But it's like, again, I'm not like, if you want to talk about something and you want to square something, don't wait for me to come to you. Because if it's important to you, you should come to me. Or, just set up a date, just call me. Like we can. It's not like some mad thing. It's not like some mad. I know it's difficult with guys, like especially older guys. Like you don't talk about your. I mean, again, background we're all from, and I include Scott in this too. Don't really talk about your feelings, do you? Don't talk about your fucking feelings, and like you never see you catch feelings, do you? If like someone does something that like actually upsets you, you don't admit it. No, you just say he's a cunt, and that's it, and you move on with it. So we're still living in that stupid toxic masculinity machismo world, where you don't talk about that stuff. And I'm sure Scott probably is thinking to himself, those guys really hurt my feelings. How could they argue over something as cut and dry as the rules about the pandemic, and how could they criticize the CSPPA? It's perception's weird like that. But yeah, I mean, I still think that Scott. The thing that's been the problem for me is just this idea that like I need to go and square it away. I don't think I've done anything wrong. Like he gets an opinion, I get an opinion. He knows things, I know things. I don't think every time I want to give an opinion based on things I know, I need to go and ask him if it's all right to give that opinion. And the assumption is he knows everything I know, but also he knows more on top, because it's like, come on, man. It's just a mad way to live. But yeah, I think overall, I think like the pandemic's been bad for a lot of relationships. I'd struggle to think of anything. I'd struggle to think of anything that makes me more sad than the idea that like we were the three like iconoclasts of the esports scene, always had each other's back, argued at times, but never like mean spirited. Just friendly adversarial stuff. And now it's like we're in a position where we go into 2021 like after all of our years together, not talking to each other. But takes two to fix that. So I guess that's it. And anyone else?
I would also say that's also a topic that isn't really just on our end, in case people don't get it. Like that's a CSPPA topic in general. Like the CSPPA people, as I pointed out on that episode I'm going to say like 2 or 3 episodes back. I think it was the one before Henry and all them came on. They've done a terrible job back channeling. Like that organization of people don't seem. I've told you, it's always very sinister to me when people want to be really deep in esports but don't want to communicate with the people who are endemic to esports. It's the same reason why the Valve angle always struck me a bit weird. It's like, well, if you actually care about the space, you don't need to sit around wondering what we all think. Like, you can just contact some of us. We'll tell you. Like, well, you can even tell us, by the way. I'm using the Valve example because it's a good example where it's not like you have to take on board what we say, but just listen. Just have an avenue to talk about these things.
Yeah. So Elon says, since Moses is the bald fraud, what nickname should Henry get? I just call him bald. I just call him a bald fraud as well, honestly. But I mean, like that's the running joke. If you're linked in any way to a team and you're not doing well, you're just a ball fraud. That's all there is to it. But I don't know. I don't know if there's a specific one for
something. I'll just tell you this because you might appreciate just how stupid this is. Like when I was bored on my couple of weeks off, because I'm used to just doing stuff all the time. So even just sitting around just watching nothing, like I have to like keep trying to find stuff that's interesting. I don't like to just watch random stuff for no reason. So what I did actually start watching though is that where they did that reality series where it was about like this Tottenham Hotspur season with Mourinho, this all or nothing.
It's great, isn't it?
And I was loving it. It was actually really good. But you know the problem? This is why I felt so stupid. Because I haven't watched football in ages. So I was getting into it. I was going, fuck, it's interesting. Like, we're watching the cup time, and then all of a sudden, obviously, coronavirus just hits in it and just ruins the whole thing. And I'm like, why have I just gone into why am I watching a show where I should have known that was going to happen? Like, I'm waiting. Like, I wonder how they do it at the end of the season. It's like the season's cancelled, Gaffer. It's over. Like, I'm doing it again. I'm back in again. Get out of it. Go into a fantasy world. So I've wrecked myself with that, haven't I?
Yeah, no, it's a tough one. But yeah,
I don't though.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I love Mourinho. I think though,
he's a legend.
Yeah, I think he's handled some stuff terribly at Tottenham, and I think the end of his tenure at Man United was like, I don't know, it kind of felt like, you know, when people are just giving up and they just don't really give a fuck. I got that vibe, but then, you know, if Tottenham do well this season, if they have a legitimate title run, and like as in, you know, they're there or thereabouts come the end of the season. I mean, they've got to get top 4. You know, if that happens, I think fair enough. He can be vindicated a little bit. I mean, he's got Kane and Son doing incredible things. I mean, they broke like this mad fucking strikers record with like however many 22 fucking games left to go or whatever. So
no, mate, that guy. Like, one thing you cannot deny about that guy. Just look at his career. He is the fucking talent whisperer. Yeah. And that guy gets a star play. It's like Carragher. He always brings out the best out of him, doesn't he?
Oh, I always love that quote from Ibrahimovic, who, by the way, is a great quotable sports personality in general because he doesn't give a fuck. But he said when he played for he was like something like, I think it was Guardiola was the other coach he used, but he said like I would play for Guardiola, but I would die for Mourinho. That's like, yeah, you know, when you're on, but then again. I always thought that like he's definitely got some foibles. Like he let some big talent sort of slip through the cracks in his tenure. It's not always as cut and dry as him being a talent whisperer, because like he's definitely let, you know, some big names kind of like, you know, be adrift because he doesn't like their attitude or whatever, like Lukaku and stuff. So, but whatever. Anyway. Right, Flacksmith. Right. So this is a follow-on question. He said Flacksmith suggested calling him the cranky caster, with the emphasis being on crank. Now I've never seen Henry do crank, so I'm gonna just say, but he does like the film Crank.
Actually, not a bad movie.
Crank and Crank 2 are great. I love them.
Because what I like about those movies is they're the ones, they don't come in with any pretensions. It's just exactly what it says.
Yeah,
it's just a fun romp, isn't it?
Perfect.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and I think I tried to make Sam. Watch it one time. And
I've seen Crank before.
Yeah,
mate, I'm pretty sure the movie Crank is just like Sam at an event. It's like,
yeah,
fuck, I've got chips over.
Yeah, it's going slow.
I know.
Yeah, he thought it was a fucking documentary, mate. So if I do that.
What's this? Just a vlog or something like that?
Yeah. Alice the Alchemist, with how technology like Hawkeye and VAR have been implemented for sports like tennis and football to make decisions during critical moments, would there be a similar implementation? If there was technology that was required, would a similar implementation where you have to stop and assess things kill esports, or would there be an alternative like a forced arbitration system that could work? Very complicated and deep question. I mean, I think we've definitely, like, the one issue, it doesn't, I'm just going to try and turn your question into something tangible that I can sort of talk about in a little soundbite fashion. But I think the big problem we've got is that when things go wrong, often it's not because something has been incorrectly used in the game. That's super rare. Like the Olaf
Yes,
boost.
exactly.
The all-off boost is an
External
example
shit,
of that.
basically,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's generally related to more tech issues and mechanics. Like what happens if somebody lags while they're, coming around a corner? And I think that happened in what event was it recently? I even tweeted about it. There was an event basically where they restarted a round. It was at IEM. There was some team anyway, and it basically turned around and sort of said, "Oh yeah, we're just going to restart that round." And it was like, wait, but why? And they did it because like players, what they do is when there's like a lag or something fucks up or there's a misbuy at the start of the round, they say, "Oh fuck, yeah, quick," and they shoot each other and they TK each other immediately quick because they think the more damage they do, the more fucked up and foobar the round is. The least it can be salvaged, the more likely the referees, the admins are going to give them a sympathetic decision. There you go. Yeah, it was Navi and Astralis on Nuke, and it was Astralis. And Glaive said he lagged out at the start of the round, so they like instantly team killed and went, "Yeah, well, you got to restart the round, right?" And it's like, nah, fuck this shit. Like, I mean, that was a terrible decision. There was actually the rule. The rule is if there's damage been done in the round, doesn't matter if it's a team attack or not. You can't just do it. So the thing that has to change is we have to just stop talking about sportsmanship like it's an actual codified rule. It's not. It's a concept. It can be a very good concept. Paolo Di Canio not scoring a goal as a goalkeeper because Tim Howard's injured on the floor and he doesn't want to do something cheap. Wonderful gesture, round of applause. Everyone loves it. But equally, if his team had got fucking relegated that season by 1 goal, as a gaffer, I'm firing that cunt because his little moment of fucking hubris has cost us millions of potentially people their jobs. Sports is a cutthroat business, and so. As I said, it's nice sportsmanship. It's a nice idea. It's a nice ideal to have. But when admins turn around and say, "Well, what do you guys want to do?" Nah,
I hate that. Yeah,
nah.
That's always been the number one thing I want out with esports. Exactly.
That's
Let
got
the players
to go.
Just basically, the problem is this: it's not the idea that players get input; it's the idea that admin that Richard's referring to, somebody just wants to be friends with that pro player, is just going to do whatever they say. That's exactly the opposite what you want in an authority position. I would say, just generally, the best thing about esports is that you don't typically need refs. Like you only need it if something's gone really wrong. What makes actual real sports suck is that you need a ref all the time, because the problem is in a real sport, there's always some conceit that doesn't exist in real life. Like, guess what? In real life, I can run over that line of scrimmage anytime I want. And you just tell me not to do it in an NFL game. So the real problem is that in real games, the game doesn't exist without the ref. Whereas luckily in esports, we rarely need the refs. And thank God for it. Yeah,
and unfortunately, when they get called in, more often than not, it's some sort of weird shitting the bed exercise. That's the problem. It's actually better when the admins and refs aren't there. So I don't think it would kill esports if we had to be more intensely involved or anything. For me, it's just about making the right decision. I don't give a fuck about your ideas about what's fair and what isn't. What do the rules say? That's all that matters at the end of the day. And you're given a job, you're given a fucking salary to be the guy that on occasion has to come and tell these players, who are all millionaires probably at the tournaments we're talking about, to shut the fuck up, and these are the rules. But they never do. Gaming Paul DK, what goes first, milk or cereal, and why is the other way around wrong? This question is mainly for Sam. Well, no.
One of those ones where it's like the fucking pineapple on pizza thing, where it's like, again, people are just picking arbitrary things to define their whole life off or whatever.
Yeah, no, obviously people are just fucking, mate. The things people argue about on social media, and it's like, here's the problem though. It always starts out as just a funny thing, like, do you wipe your ass standing up or sitting down? And what you do is, the point of the exercise is to find out interesting little quirks of human behavior, because there is probably something you do in your life that is so unique to you, and you will only find out by talking about it, which could only happen by chance, something really mundane. And then you find out you do something completely differently to everyone else on the planet. what's happened with social media is that mystique is gone because every daft cunt with an idea in their head thinks they have to just share that idea all the time, as loudly as possible, to as many people as possible, tweet it at celebrities. I'm important, my ideas matter. Like it's mental. So what you end up with is nonsense like this, where like the flat earth thing started as like an intellectual exercise and a bit of a joke, a rhetorical device to see how good your argumentation could be, but then morons started believing it because the internet doesn't have a moron filter. It's the same with stuff like pineapple on pizza, innit? People go too far with it. Pineapple is good. Like, actually, on some pizzas it's sound. End of discussion. Like, a pizza isn't like some arbitrary, unique...
Exactly.
It's food, and all food has a flavor balance. And pineapple is sweet, and sometimes sweet is good, depending on all the other.
Maybe some sort of a cooked meat, ham or something.
Yeah, something that has a bit of salt to it. Like, wow, flavor profile. Who knew? Just because it's pizza, you dickheads, doesn't mean that somehow it's completely immune to all the other rules of like cookery out there. No, it's complete nonsense. Now, kiwi on the other, no. Anyway, the point is that people go too far with a lot of this. But I will just say, and then I'll throw over to Sam, is that for me, definitely cereal in first and then followed up by the milk.
Goes out the same, doesn't it?
Yeah,
do you know how much milk you're going to put in? If you put the milk in first,
yeah,
you might
exactly.
not put enough cereal in.
Well, so the argument about the other way, Sam,
right,
is that some people believe, and I don't know why they believe this, because it can't physically
Where's
be
this
true.
going? Come on.
Well, is that if you put the milk in first and you pour the cereal on the milk, it maintains the crunch for longer, so the first mouthfuls you have, you get more crunch on the cereal. It doesn't sog.
Yeah, because you just pour the milk in down the side of the bowl
just about
if you want to do it.
Yeah. Isn't it just about the amount of time before it sogs?
Mate, I pour my milk in the cereal like I pour a
No,
pint
it doesn't.
right on the edge of the bowl.
That can't be true. But I've heard that argument.
With that said, I will just say right now, I now do in this moment just look down on myself as a child so much because I've just realised I hate when the cereal gets soggy. So why did I put it all in the bowl to begin with? Why not just put half, eat some, put some more in, and it'll always be crunchy?
Well, now you're getting into uncharted territory. No one's argued about that on Twitter. Exactly. You've done it again.
Now and go, oi, put half of that in now. Everything's different after that.
That would be your use of the time machine, would it?
That'd be my one use. Probably don't even talk shit on Katowice after that. Probably everything works out with TSM. Who knows? Everything could have been different. Everything could have been different. Nick still be a cunt, but I can't change that timeline. I'm fixing cereal first, guys.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you, mate. I don't blame you. Just a ridiculous thing. Because the next follow-up is what is the most ideal way to wipe one's ass? But this is echo. Like I'm just saying, mate.
Well, the obvious joke would be something like, with the fucking contract that you signed to a Flashpoint.
There you go. You've done it.
There you go.
For me, just whatever gets it clean. All asses are different, so some and all shits are different. Like, let's just be real. Like, it's all well and good when you've got a really nice, normal, healthy stool and one wipe and it's all done. Perfect. Sometimes it's a fucking disaster, innit?
You know what? I'm going to say something from knowing me, the first point you ever met me in esports, this is actual insane personality growth. Are you ready?
I know what you're going to say.
I'm not even trolling you. I can't believe in 2021 I'm starting 2021 on this level. I'm siding with the motherfucking French because I'm going to say it. You know what? Especially when you get a bit older. Sometimes toilet paper ain't enough, Rich. You need a shower after that shit. So that, you know what? I used to be like the rest of you looking down. What's that bidet all about? The bidet is straight fire, mate. Everyone should have one. They're actually an awesome concept.
So I'm gonna just tell you this story.
Yeah,
like as someone who's travelled a little bit, mate. You ever took a shit on one of them toilets that shoot warm water up your ass?
Yeah,
but it's awesome.
In Korea, mate,
it's the shit, isn't it?
They're onto something. Like
you can manually adjust the direction, adjust the temperature, the toilet seat temperature.
That's a game changer right there.
Now, listen, I'm the same. I didn't like a lot of things involving my ring.
Just French in general, yeah.
Like a lot of things involving my ring. I didn't think I would like it. Turns out,
chance.
pretty, yeah. Turns out I gave it a chance, and I did. So yeah, just putting that out there. Right. Anyway, first sock. Is there a decent chance of promising North American talent being recruited into European international teams, or are rising stars such as Zeppa and Leaf destined to be whisked away to Valorant? Well, I mean, the proof in the pudding's been in the eating. Zeppa, Leaf, well, Vanity certainly has been confirmed as well. Looks like that Chaos team is essentially going across to Valorant. I think we touched on this a little bit in the last, the show before last, the penultimate show of the year, where we basically said, like, if Valve, all parties have shit the bed so much, and the pandemic has amplified it, that basically, if you're a North American FPS player, you're playing Valorant all through 2021, and I with almost no exceptions, unless you're the absolute top level players that European team would break the bank for, and it makes sense for you to travel and be away from your family and all that stuff. You're just going to go and play Valorant, aren't you?
You have to be Twistzz. That's about the only chance you've got if you're in North America. But hit that or some of MIBR. I don't think otherwise you're going to get it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's like, in the free agency thing, Twistzz and Obo are the big two, right?
Yes.
I mean, they're the ones that go, which is weird because obviously Obo said he didn't want to go to Europe, and then you start asking questions. Well,
Changed his tune, I noticed.
Yeah. Now it's, we do want to go back to Europe. So, which, listen, he's just a kid, so I'm not going to say I'm not going to do the HLTV meme and say I've lost respect or whatever. An evolving situation. He's probably desperate to get home, was frightened, was worried, got back home, and whatever. But yeah, I just think like NACS is done through 2021. I might never come back, guys. You might have to wake up to that fact. Unless Valve are going to sort of do something to kickstart it, or someone somewhere is going to do something to kickstart it. Might just be an entire continent's gone. I mean, that is actually my belief. I think that's where we're at. Chingu, what was your most favorite or exciting scandal of 2021 in any esport? 2020 in any esport.
You know what? Even though it might seem like a boring one because it might be too obvious to some people, not even Blast, specifically LEC directly getting involved with Neon. Still, that's one of those ones where, like, mate, that would be like a good headline for an esports satire site. That the broadcast that never stops flexing Pride Month then joins with Neon. Like you can't actually, that's how bad esports is now. You can't satirize it. Like, it's like that shit, where like half the fucking headlines from the Babylon B probably will just be real in 3 months anyway. Like, they're just too on the nose, aren't they? Like the jokes they make are just too close to
it's like yes, Prime Minister, mate. It's mental.
It's gotten really crazy now. Because that one, I still think of it now and just think, like, I understand how someone could think it was a good idea. Not saying I do, I'm saying how they could. I can even understand how someone in the business department goes, let's do it. What I can't understand is how at the end of the whole process, they not only went live with it all, but then, like you reported, after the fact, went out of their way to communicate, it was actually all fine. We're totally cool with what's probably the biggest faux part of our entire indie careers, but we're totally cool with it. That's still just so surreal to me. It just shows how far out of touch some people are with, like, the tone of the current world.
Imagine though, like, imagine being in a room with these North American executives who spend 70% of their time virtue signaling between, like, back rubs and spending all the money they've made doing business with China, right, over at Riot Games, all Chinese money. And you sit in a room with people from, like, the LGBT community and try and rationalize and explain to them why partnering with another country that also has outdated modes of thinking around LGBT people is a good thing. And actually, you should work the broadcast. And we're very surprised, actually, that you take it this seriously. Crazy.
It must even have a vibe of sort of like, because this is what people don't get, Richard, because unfortunately in League, obviously people have been able to ignore your stuff that you can't get on Reddit. People try to almost make it seem, right, like that Riot really does believe that they got it wrong. Whereas the vibe I got from your reporting was that they were almost like the head office people being like, why are they causing a big deal about this? It was almost like that sort of vibe, right?
Yeah, I mean that's accurate. There were basically people that couldn't believe it had got to that stage that they were going to have to even make a phone call about what this can't be resolved. Like it was very much like that. Like, well, here come the parents, and then fair play to the talent and everyone else involved. Like they were pretty, and it wasn't just the talent. I mean, it was the production crew too. To their credit, they were resolute. They were going to walk out. I mean, I keep saying that the first strike action we've had, but actually I guess technically it was sort of neon because it was threatened. It was very
technically for the broadcast talent.
It was so and that one absolutely warranted, absolutely.
That's an example when you should actually strike, exactly as you said.
Which, by the way, just makes like the likes of Chris J saying, well, what can we do with ESL? The production staff and the staff at that worked at the Riot broadcast for League of Legends brought that company to its knees and made them walk away from a multi-million-dollar sponsorship deal. Within 48 hours or whatever it was. So don't you ever tell me that you're we can't strike for that, but we can strike for this small petty stuff over here. You just got to be willing to do it. So for me, I mean, there was so many mad.
There's a lot this year.
Yeah,
what else is in that league for you?
It's a tough one, man. I'm almost trying to think because, let me just have a look at my fucking authors.
Because obviously all the MIBR shit was all this year. There's a lot of shit this year. What else?
Let me see.
There's got to have been some stuff with. Was there anything mad with Overwatch League this year? I'm trying to think. Earlier this year was there anything?
Was there anything mad with Overwatch League? It's all mad. It completely collapsed. All of the staff went.
True.
You had the Vancouver Titans fucking mess.
Wait, this just shows how. When you're answering a question, you have to know where someone else is at. Like, if people actually really, if people in esports were actually honest when they go outside of the mainstream esports world into the mainstream of culture, and they talked about how outrageous it is that all those Overwatch League teams just cut real quality players and replaced them with essentially bench warmers to save money. That is one of the most outrageous stories of all of esports history, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
because they still maintain the conceit. It's a profitable league. It's a good league. It's going to be great. And then all the action betrays the opposite. It suggests that actually they all lost faith in it.
Yeah, and look, not just that though, right? I mean, there's so there was so much going on at the Overwatch League. I mean, just even now as of today, I just did a video on it. They're basically doing cashback deals for the people that bought in. They've finally acknowledged, the valuation.
That had to happen sooner or later because I'm sure someone's threatening to just leave eventually.
That everyone wants to sell up. And what they did is they went to them and said, listen, you've got to give us some money back. You promised us we were going to be making money from these homestand events. We can't do it because of the pandemic. Activision Blizzard's response, have you heard about PPP loans you can get from the government? We'll help talk you through it. So they weren't even willing to give them, because, Bobby Kotick has to sit like a fucking fat, corpulent, greasy dragon. He has to fucking sit on a pile of all the money, right? By the way, which a lot of it's squirreled away in tax havens around the world. Activision Blizzard is one of the most unscrupulous companies in our space by a long fucking way. And, they weren't even willing to give them back. These people who believed in the project, bought into the bullshit, paid 20 million, agreed to all of this, right? So now, finally, they've said, all right, we'll give you a little bit of cash back, or you don't have to pay us as much. Ridiculous. So, I mean, all of the Overwatch League in 2020, all of that stuff was mental. There was all of the FaZe Tfue lawsuit stuff.
All right, okay.
I mean, do you want to know what's mad about that? People have just forgotten about it. But they settled. And we don't know why or how or for what.
They settled?
Well, as in both parties came to an agreement is how they worded it, right?
Right. That's nice. So, very obvious thing, because you would think one side would want to hold out on that one.
Well, I mean, so from what I saw, based on all of the bits and pieces, and I guess I can say this now, I stopped reporting on it because I was potentially going to be called as an expert witness for Tfue.
Okay.
So I did a stream the other day. I was talking about how mad my 2020 was and how it sucked. Well, one of the other thing was I had two parties threatening to sue me for completely honest and accurate reporting, knowing that you just bleed me out financially. And I had another party saying they were going to potentially subpoena me. Esports has just gone mad now. So the types of stories I do, people don't like it. There's all this money there. But the other thing was, Tifu's legal team were potentially thinking about bringing me in. So I was going to have to fly to America, do this, like I was going to get questioned, cross-examined, all of that stuff. I had to explain what esports was. I had to explain why I think FaZe is bad, explain the bigger context about what they were doing with the contracts and all of that madness. So I was like, I was going to be an expert witness. And yeah, I mean, the fact that they just settled, I'm super disappointed, because if you remember that whole talent agency thing, that could have been a landmark case. Landmark if there'd been a ruling there.
On that one.
Yeah, but so disappointed that they settled, but I understand why. I mean, but based on what I saw, like it was a slam dunk. I thought Tfue was going to win that no problem. I mean, it just looked so nailed on. But
people don't know, basically, like there's a load of aspects in that were basically, it wasn't just about esports. It was about, like, as Richard says, what is an agent essentially in America? Because there was all sorts of implications for esports that were enormous. Like, for example, as far as I know, some of the things that we just take for granted that all can do, like tell you where you're going to play from, where you're going to work, what you're going to do, like some of those things wouldn't be covered if they count themselves as agents, basically. So yeah, I was also hoping we'd have an outcome, so we get an answer one way or the other.
Yeah. So you know, crazy stuff. But yeah, there's just loads. I mean, you know, just so many. It's esports, man. Well, I'll have to have a think.
There's
I might
too many on this one. Yeah, I'm thinking of more myself. Like, for example, I still think the idea that Astralis is still considered an enormous org, innovative, blah blah, and they ask their own players to take a 30% pay cut with low running costs.
Oh yeah,
I think that's one of the most. It just shows how, like, basically one thing I've learned this year, especially, is it's like I said about the iBuyPower thing. The actual fact that they threw a game and match fixed it is actually less important than the sexy angle that someone's girlfriend got mad at them and revealed it all on a phone. That's the angle that gets people interested, not the crime. So it's similar with the Astralis thing. The real problem with the Astralis stuff, it's like that question the guy asked about Nicola Nyholm. The real answer is this. It's only in Nicola Nyholm's mind is he a Bond villain. He's actually too mundane for that. He's just a shit cunt used car salesman, minorly ripping people off. And keyword minorly. He's not even one of the worst offenders in the space. He's just got his own self-interest and he'll minorly fuck you over to get there. Like, these people aren't even as cool as big villains. Like, it's actually incredibly mundane how shit these guys are.
I mean, you know, what I'd like to have a crack at in 2021, if I'm going to get back into it and go out on like a high, is, you know, I'd like to have a crack at some of this organized crime stuff. Actually, you know, get the pulse racing a little bit, because, you know, I've been sent so much stuff where I'm like hearing about match fixing and people are saying, you know, the crime syndicates are sending people up to people's houses and stuff, and I'm just fucking sick of it, mate. I'm just fucking, I don't give a fuck. You know, I don't scare easy. I've seen shit. So, you know, there's like, it's time for someone to fucking lift the veil on China. Surely, enough's enough on that bullshit. That match, like with that newbie ban that just happened today. You know, former TI winners have, like, if they're doing it, everyone's doing it, mate. Like, it's fucking, people don't realize how prevalent it is. And as I said on Twitter today, it's not, it's so prevalent, they're not being banned for the matches they fixed. It's almost certainly the matches they refuse to fix. That's what they do, you see. They get you in, they make you fix a game, they lull you into this false sense of security, and then one time you say, look, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to walk away. And what they then do is they go, but we've got all the evidence that you fixed all them other games. Doesn't affect us, we're criminals anyway, we're a criminal element. You know, so we'll release it. And that's why when you look at that Captain Moore, those chat logs that came out from Ty Lue really frames it in a different way. How long had they known him? What type of conversations had they had? Why were they blackmailing him? Him releasing those logs and going, look, they tried to blackmail me, but we never do anything. Why did you ever talk to that guy? What type of conversations did you have? These are the big questions.
People don't know that is also why it's almost inevitable some of these cases will come to bear eventually, is exactly the premise you're talking about. Because I've also heard similar things about some of the Korean match fixers, which went like this. They did it a few times because they did, you know, like they're on hard times, they need the money, or someone who knows them gets them to do it. But this is what I was told, is that a lot of the times that it in any way went public or started to get dodgy was when they would then later, the guy who wants you to fix the match, comes to you and says, fix this match. You go, I'm not doing that one. And he goes, you're going to do it or else. And then that's the problem. Once you're on the hook is basically when you're fucked. Before that, you were voluntarily entering into a crime. But after that, they can basically then just leverage it against you, of course. So then what you do, and eventually they'll kiss you out.
What you have to remember is, guys, and like, this is just a lesson in life. But when when bullies, and that's essentially what criminals are when you distill it down to it, when they try and force you into doing something, and they'll try and coerce you with promises of riches or promises of violence, leverage your family against you. It's like the scorpion and the frog. Once they've got you in there, their nature will you're never off that hook. And when you cannot serve their purposes anymore, at best, the best you can hope for is they will discard you and ruin you. Unfortunately, in the world of crime, it's usually far, far worse. Listen, the match fixing that goes on in America, it's kids that can't make money playing video games trying to make money playing video games. It don't excuse it, but it's way more nuanced and complicated in China, where a fucking kingpin sends people to your house and they put not a metaphorical gun to your head, a literal gun to your head, and say, we have money riding on this, you are going to fix this game and we are going to give you a cut. Very hard to refuse under those circumstances, I would say, especially if it's something we all on some level acknowledge as being trivial. So I'd like to have a crack at that. I'd like to. I'm already kind of got one toe in the water, but we'll wait and see. Right, let's wrap this up. Last 3 questions. Let's do them rapid fire. No, nowhere near. Sorry, 4. Carve. In the same way that record label executives sometimes have a special signing pen for artists in their contracts, do you also think Navia brings out a special Kalashnikov?
He means the pen, of course, a novelty pen, of course.
That is the fucking...
That was good. That was good.
That is one of the funniest questions we've ever had. Well done, Carv. And he even says perhaps one decked out in the team colours with the same shitty decals that are tattooed on Zeus's neck. So he's even got a burning on Zeus. So
I've just remembered the E-League logo thing he's got. Yeah,
just
the
had
barcode.
it. Just for no reason. Brilliant. Thanks, Carv. Jerky's Minion, what do you think of FaZe Bank's decision to party in a club during full coronavirus on New Year's Eve? I mean, first of all, I wouldn't expect any different from FaZe.
That's also like fucking go with the territory. Surely it's FaZe Bank, for fuck's sake.
I mean, you know,
what do you expect?
Like, FaZe Bank's trashed a luxury hotel suite in Vegas, and they were suing him, and he just paid him off. He just gets, you know, so he's just one of those guys, you know, like
he doesn't live normal life. Come on, man. He lives another reality of this. He's like a Black Mirror episode, isn't he?
Yeah. So for me, I don't, you know, I don't want to get into the whole like stay at home, never go out, wear the mask, do what you're told. Oh, but then they're taking away our liberties, man. There's like some mad, demented debate there, isn't there, that people are having? And it's just like, I wish we existed in a time where not everything had to be some sort of insane, politicized, like, this is the orthodox thought. If you deviate from it, you're a right-wing, fascist, alt-right, arsehole cunt, who's an irredeemable personality for the rest of his life. We exist in a time now where there's this thing called, I'm calling it death shaming. We literally are now, where if somebody dies, like sometimes tragically young from COVID, people are looking at their tweets, looking at the social media profile, looking at their standards. Were they ever skeptical of the virus? Then if so, they deserve to die. Like, fucking hell. The official sources were literally telling us in January and February that it wasn't worse than a seasonal flu and you didn't have anything to worry about. And then they memory hold all of that shit by April. Yeah. Dr. Fauci said, you don't need to wear a mask. Don't worry about going out. You know, now again, April, May, they flip it around. It's awful. It's awful. Like, no one deserves to die of a fucking what should be a treatable illness. And I wish we could sort of come together and channel the anger where it deserves to be. And that is
and conquer tactics so that you don't get angry at the government. Basically, to make you angry at each other. It's obvious, isn't it?
But also not only that. I mean, like, your government's handled it badly, but before it even got to your government handling it badly, we had a fucking Chinese cover up. More and more reports coming out every day. It came out of a laboratory. Like, why does China have a fucking coronavirus that seems to target fat people, people with certain diseases, old people, seems to call the weak? Bit worrying, that, in my opinion. Yeah, so, really? But we'll never look at it because it's fucking China. They've got all the money. They own you. They own the media. So I sound like Alex Jones now, but it's all true. And the reality is that we end up arguing because there's some video or some cunt who went out when he shouldn't. Yeah, he shouldn't have done it, should he? Yeah, it's irresponsible. But if you're getting so angry, you're saying like he's a fucking murderer because he went out on New Year's Eve, but you don't have a single solitary fuck to give about the Chinese government and the lies and the fake numbers and the World Health Organization. If you can't get angry about that, you've got no right getting angry at your neighbor for breaking protocol. Like, irresponsible, Spades Banks. If you're looking at him for a fucking moral, exactly. Yeah, if you're looking at him for some sort of moral upstanding code, you're adrift anyway. So I don't know, mate. I think the whole COVID thing's a fucking mess. That's why I don't like talking about it.
Yeah, agreed. There's nothing good comes out of it.
Anyway, last one, Chris with a Q. Who is the best rapper of the last decade, and why is it a Carla? Do you agree with that?
Guy?
Yeah,
he's all right. Who actually is the best rapper of the last decade? That's that.
I'm too much of a boomer. I'm still only bumping that old school shit, me.
The problem is, I don't really listen to that much new music. I'm pretty sure, based on the time span, like modern fans would probably say it's like fucking Kendrick Lamar or something. I think it's probably who I'm thinking they'd go for, or like Pusha T or something. That's probably more their speed. I like old school shit. Yeah, I'm like Vinnie Paz and that, mate. That's my shit.
Yeah, that's really hard.
Stuff.
Yeah, and I'm like you as well. I think when the drugs changed, and the music changed.
That's another thing. I'm not really sort of like a mumble rap guy. It's not really my like. Put it this way, even the aesthetic isn't cool to me. Like I don't get the aesthetic of like, oh, my life's really tragic and I'm depressed, so I'm going to take prescription pills. It's like, what's cool about that? Like,
I know. Yeah, this sounds like you should. Yeah, this sounds like you should get some help. Yeah, it sounds like you should get some help, mate. You know, so yeah, it's an interesting direction. It's not one that hip hop's like historically had. I mean, like hip hop is historically about flamboyant, like you say, it's flexing, swagger, crime, sex. Like I mean, one of my favorite hip hop groups of all time is fucking 3-6 Mafia. I fucking listen to that shit all the time. And what was interesting there is they were on that purple drank.
Yes,
they were taking it down as
the real shit.
Yeah, but they weren't doing it to beat depression. They were doing it because they just wanted to get fucking lit. So 3-6. So I don't know. No one's come close to any of the old school shit, in my opinion, in the last 10 years. That's why everyone says hip hop's dead. Whatever. This show's dead. Let's fucking wrap it up. I'm gonna be dead soon. I'm fucked. Right. Bane Law says put in the chat is our patrons. So I'm gonna do our sponsor shout outs first. Obviously, .com, beat that out. We're going to do a shout out as well to NordVPN, nordvpn.com, my VPN sponsor. 70% off if you go sign up at nordvpn.com/RLS. And our patrons that gave us all the money. I can't believe you've actually changed the name of what I recommended. It's catching me off guard. So our $100 patrons, Jerky's Minion, of course. Thanks for all your generosity and epic donation the other day, brother. Blunt Smoking Sex Enthusiast. We're now making it Twitch compliant. Carve, Flacksmith, Hanmaru Alice, J Dubs, Marcus Kiumpar, Tobias Bernasconi, Zarathenia. And our $50 patrons, Shingu, Benakagi, Cathal, Echo, Gaming Paul DK, Goody Woody, Chris with a K. Oh, wait, yeah, I called it Chris with a Q earlier because it was a Q was for the question. It's Chris with a K. That makes sense because you can't really spell Chris with a Q. Yeah, maybe you can actually. Whatever. Miss Alcoholic, Quasar Fox, Reykjavik Gonstein, Rez Chi, Sard Sawar, Smart Superman, Lonnie, Watch Doge, Elon, BP420, First Sock, Gerhan Kaya, and Sulf. Thanks to everyone for tuning in tonight. We'll see you on the next episode of By the Numbers. And until then, take care of yourself.